touched upon the issue of mental health. In my previous life in law enforcement, I come to see that in many cases, there are parallels, not all the time, but between mental health and also substance abuse, alcohol abuse, et cetera. That is very common. And what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Did one contribute to the other, vice versa? I'm going to leave it up to the professionals here that can speak further on that. However, there's also the topic of recreational or experimental use, or overdoing it sometimes with alcohol. And after my 27 plus years in municipal law enforcement, where I've seen a ton, I came to Lewis as a police officer for a couple of years, and one incident in particular that really struck me is responding to a dorm room for an odor of cannabis, and this individual had probably about 30 grams in various forms laying around his dorm room. And when I was taking the information down, I said, you know this is a no-no, right? Yeah. Can you please not alert anybody about this? I go, why is that? And he goes, well, I'm an aviation student, and I'm going to be graduating in the spring. And this was a few years back, and I'm scratching my head. I didn't know much about aviation, but I realized this is probably a no-no. And it might be more lack of knowledge or lack of taking it seriously. So this program today could go in different directions. A lot of people ask me, what is your intent for today? And it's strictly awareness. What are we as leaders of this university if we do not prepare you for the real world? If we don't set you up for success by doing everything we can? And today's event is centered around trying to avoid certain decisions that could make major implications in your career moving forward. Neither you nor your parents want to spend $250,000 over 4 years to find out that you are now ineligible to get a certification or a license or whatever. And I'm going to let those speakers, they're far better speakers than me, they're going to speak on these topics. So I'm going to move this forward. I'm going to ask you now, if you can, silence the phones, put it on vibrate, whatever you need to do. We're going to kick this off. Well, let me go over the game plan. We're going to have a series of speakers in the morning. We're going to take a break for about maybe 10 minutes. The refreshments and coffee and everything will still be there. We ask you that you come back promptly so we can get the ball rolling for the last maybe 90 minutes or so. We need to stay on point. We're going to have an opportunity after each speaker for some Q&A. We're going to keep it fairly brief because at the end, and I encourage you, whether you go out for break or on the door or on the desks outside, there's an opportunity to submit anonymous questions, if you like. There's also an opportunity for us to follow up on your anonymous questions and post that in the event we can't get to it today. It's all about continual improvement here. That's all we're trying to address. I'm going to have one introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Phillips. And I do not need to read from a script. I don't need to look at my notes. I'm going to tell you something from the heart. We have a very special guest today. If you are a Cub fan or a Bear fan or a Green Bay fan, like some of you might be, you might have seen somebody belt out the national anthem, including World Series Game 6 last year in Toronto, several venues throughout the country. I'm worried that the glass might shatter in here with his voice, but at the same point, it brings me no greater pleasure to introduce my cousin, John Vincent.
Thank you, Anthony. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free. And the home of the brave.
Well, that's tough to follow. So that was awesome. Again, just to echo a couple things Mr. Menino said, thank you for being here. This is an important topic, something that you guys have just been crossing your path probably middle school onward. I was talking to one of my classes just last week about this, and the irony is I would say I'm offered more drugs now as an adult than I was when I was in middle school and high school. You know, you go through the DARE program, that's what it was when I was a kid, and it was like someone's gonna jump out of a bush and offer you something, and that never happened to me. But with the legalization of marijuana in Illinois, you know, it's more prevalent and it's in our face. Last year, we talked about mental health in aviation and some of the huge gaps that are in existence with that, how individuals in their professional careers are afraid to ask for help when they need it because of the potential perceived repercussions with the federal government and the FAA. So regrettably, a lot of times pilots, controllers, maintenance professionals, industry professionals turn towards substances to cope with that. So that's what this is about today. We as a department are taking this extremely seriously. We want to put your interests at the forefront of all that we do. We're working on some new guidelines and policies within the department. But today, it's about information and getting that out to you guys. So I just wanted to kind of give you a quick rundown of that. Also, some quick thank yous. Captain Dolores Pavletic, she's a friend of Lewis. Her son went here. She's an alumnus, amazing woman, FedEx Aviation for multiple years, and she graciously donated the funds so we can have our mental health symposium last year and this event here annually. So thanks to Captain Pavletic. Special thank you to Tony Menino for putting this together. I mean, look at this place. Last year we had standing room only in the flight deck, and we're close to that here today in the Convocation Hall. So. Also, thank you to our speakers today for taking time out of their busy schedules. Appreciate you guys all being here today as well. So, with that said, I'm going to introduce someone who doesn't need an introduction probably, but Dr. David Livingston took office as Lewis University's 10th president, July 1st, 2016, with more than 15 years of academic and leadership experience. The last 9 years, Lewis has added new health science programs as well as seen significant growth in aviation and computer science. Through the merger with St. Augustine College, Lewis has added more than 700 students and 3 additional campus locations, and Lewis has also had significant growth in our international students with over 1,000 now studying at the university. Dr. Livingston previously served as president of Lourdes University, and during his tenure, Lourdes experienced an increase in the quality, retention, and graduation rates of its students, expanded academic programs, and renovated the campus to support their strategic growth initiatives. Prior to his presidency at Lourdes, he served Mercyhurst University for 16 years in various capacities, including as a faculty member in the Religious Studies Department, president of the Faculty Senate, and vice president for advancement. I also will say that Dr. Livingston has been a huge supporter of aviation here at Lewis University, and I want to thank him for that. So, sir, would you please come up and welcome Dr. David Livingston.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. It's great to see all of you. And I'm gonna spend just a little time. You have people that are better equipped in terms of their professional background to speak to this. But I'm gonna speak a little bit from my professional background as well as my personal experience. Certainly, I wanna thank Tony, thank Dr. Phillips, all the people behind this, Kayla and her team, and Dolores. Captain Pavletic is somebody I've gotten to know because she was one of my bosses when I first started, so she was on our board of trustees. I have 30 bosses, some of you have one. That's the way it is as a president. So as Ryan said, before I got into administration, I taught religion and ethics. And one of the things that I would use sometimes in my religion classes, this bowl, it's a Japanese bowl, and it's an art form that's really from the late 1400s is when it started. It's called kintsugi. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's basically a broken bowl that they put back together with gold. It's a kind of a glue, gold paint. And it's designed, or the art form has philosophical value. And it's really about beauty and brokenness. And that, for me, is, I used to teach my basic areas, what's called theological anthropology. That's my discipline, which is about who we are as human beings in face of the divine mystery. That's the way I usually describe it. So we all sit in front of this incredible mystery that is both life and, for many people, some power beyond us. And we have to deal with our own humanity. And our own humanity is filled with this desire to transcend ourselves, to kind of seek to be better than we are, to seek to create a better world, to seek to find love. And we are also challenged by other desires that sometimes lead us to break ourselves or break other people. And that is the human condition. And we're all in it, right? There's nobody that is beyond that, myself included. Each one of us goes through life with this unbelievable capacity to create art and beauty and knowledge and friendship and love and new people. You know, I'm a dad and a grandfather. It's amazing to be in that situation. And I've done some things that have harmed people that I love deeply, right? Because that, you know, in religion, sometimes we talk about that as kind of sin, but I prefer brokenness, right? Which is why I brought the bowl, because I think it's a better way for a lot of us to relate to it. So when I do want to talk a little bit about both kind of substance abuse and addictions in general. So my family, as you know, we have a lot of people, and again, I think most of us, if you live within a family system and you actually know your family, most people have somebody in their family that has struggled with some form of addiction. For some of us in our families, because there can be, again, I'm no expert in this, but some people would say there's potential genetic tendencies, so sometimes you end up with more of it in a family system, and some families don't deal with it as much. So my grandfather, and you know, this is part of, for me, the beauty and the brokenness. One of the people I looked up to the most in my entire life. He's just an amazing man, but he was also an alcoholic. And for me growing up, it really, I guess I would say, I didn't notice it. They lived in Milwaukee. It's partly why I'm a Green Bay fan. For those of you who didn't know the reference, I'm one of the Green Bay fans in this room. We got any other Green Bay fans? All right, see, there we go. All right, so my mother grew up in Milwaukee, but my grandfather was amazing when he was present, and he wasn't always present, right? Because he would leave for 6 months at a time because of really his alcoholism. My aunt, so my mother's sister, was also an alcoholic. She married an alcoholic, so I saw a lot of this in my life. And I guess what I want to say is, it is, the stuff that you're going to talk about today is partly, again, about awareness. Knowing the consequences of behaviors and understanding what those are. And in aviation, there are sometimes some really significant consequences. But I guess I'm also saying that whether you face it in your own life, or it's one of your best friends, or it's somebody in your family, my personal view is we all get broken at sometimes, and we can heal, right? We put the bowl back together. But we don't need to hide it, and that's part of, Kintsugi is about not hiding the brokenness, right? It's naming it. In fact, like, you could put this bowl together and you could, use glue that you couldn't see, and you could shine it up so that you never saw that broken piece. And many of us do that to ourselves, right? We pretend we're not broken because nobody wants to walk around and say, look at how broken I am. At the same time, there is real value in owning it, because it's a lot easier to deal with when you can just own that and, in some sense, talk about how it's made you the person that you are. And that's the idea of Kintsugi, is that the bowl becomes a unique piece of art because of the way that it's broken. And we own that. So I hope, I know today you are going to learn a lot, but I hope what you do is really walk away with the sense of being more informed, having more capacity to deal with decisions that you have to make. But I also hope that you're gentle with yourself. And that doesn't mean being irresponsible. It means that, people do things in their lives that they wish they hadn't done. And when they look back at yesterday, they're like, man, that was stupid. We're all going to do it. And I will do it many more times. Hopefully I have another 20 or 30 years. I'm going to hurt people that I care about. I'm going to hurt myself. And I try to get better all the time. That is, we try to kind of really work on getting better all the time. So I invite you to really listen well, pay attention to yourself, and what I want for all of you is a really, really great life, because you leave from here and you represent Lewis, and just like Dolores, who's now giving back so that you can be here today, that capacity to be someone who sat in that kind of seat, or was in your position and then later gives back, I think is key, and we know that you're going to give to the world. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. It's great to see you all, and appreciate the day. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Livingston. Next up, I'm going to introduce three of our team at Lewis here. Jamie Whitting, Kayla DeCant, and Ashley Eller. They're part of our team at Lewis, our experts, if you will, in-house. So very excited for you to be here. Jamie Whitting, as a proud alumna, serves as the Health Services Clinical Supervisor and Nurse Practitioner at the Student Wellness Center here at Lewis. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Nursing at St. Xavier in Chicago and her Master of Science in Nursing right here at Lewis University. She's a board-certified family nurse practitioner with a diverse clinical background in emergency nursing, urgent care, sleep medicine, and health information technology. She is here to support students in all aspects of their health, whether it be managing an illness, offering guidance, or helping them build long-lasting healthy habits. Jamie is passionate about making healthcare approachable and wants every student at Lewis to feel heard, supported, and empowered to take charge of their needs. Kayla DeCant is the Project Director of Prevention and Outreach at Lewis University, working to prevent and respond to gender-based violence and substance use/misuse on campus. They're an experienced educator and research professional with a background in community building and violence prevention. Kayla's facilitation philosophy draws from trauma-informed practice that focuses on relationships, intersectionality, and empowerment. Kayla received her master's degree in community development and action with a certificate in women and gender studies from Vanderbilt Peabody College. They serve on the advisory board for the National Organization for Victims Advocacy, on the leadership committee for Campus Advocacy and Prevention Professionals Association, as well as on the board of National Prevention Science Coalition. And Ashley Eller is a clinical care coordinator and mental health counselor at the Students Wellness Center, supporting students to get connected to services and resources for their mental health and well-being, as well as offering counseling therapy. She received her bachelor's in psychology and social work from Loyola University in Chicago and her master's in clinical mental health counseling with a concentration in children and adolescent therapies from Lewis University. Ashley served the local community for over 5 years in private practice, focusing on supporting suicidal and high-risk youth and adults. Now back at Lewis U, as an alumna, Ashley will be working in collaboration with the Office of the Dean of Students to support Lewis SAMHSA suicide prevention grant goals to bring education awareness to students, faculty, and staff. Ashley meets students where they are in her therapeutic approach to bring wellness to the whole self through exploration, processing of identity, trauma, self-esteem, and interpersonal relationships. She collaborates with students to foster growth and empowerment to navigate institutions and systems impacting young adults as they build their futures through existential attachment, humanistic theories, and interventions. She's excited to uniquely serve Lewis through advocacy, suicide public health awareness, and by fostering caring and educated community on campus. So they're going to kind of be tag teaming here for our next session as we kind of jump into, the physiological effects of substances. So I'll hand it over to you. All right, thank you.
So I'm Jamie Whitting out of all of us. So I'm the nurse practitioner here on campus, and this is not my expertise, speaking to big crowds like this, but my expertise is your health. So when we talk about substance abuse and alcohol use, that is all directly impacts your health, and that's where we're coming back to each time. If you want to. So I had to do a little bit of educating myself on your guys' role here on campus and what you do. And I know that not everybody in the room is here because they want to fly a plane. They want to be a dispatcher, they want to do air traffic control, you want to do maintenance on these aircrafts. All of these jobs are very interrelated, and they are all safety sensitive. When one of these areas fails, it can have a real trickle effect to the other areas of aviation. So why does this matter to everybody, right? So your job is very heavy on needing high attention. You need to have good instincts in terms of strict cognition, executive functioning. You need to have information processing. You need to be able to multitask and change plans on a dime sometimes, right? And so if you are using substances in any way, all of those important needs can be slowed or affected, impacted greatly. So this is a high focus, high safety area, and so it's really important that you are at the top of your game. When I looked into the physical requirements the FAA has, they are very big on certain things to even become licensed, right? And so you need to be able to have a healthy cardiac system. So blood pressure was on here. Vision is important. Hearing is important. You can't have any speech difficulties, no dizziness, no balance issues. So that just tells me what things that are necessary to do your job and do it safely and being effective at your job, right? So go ahead, you can move on. So what that tells me is what's important to the role, essentially. Safety impact. So the impairment increases the risk of an incident, right? We're looking for prevention before anything happens, which is kind of what we're here for today, is to discuss how substance abuse, alcohol use can impact your job and prevent you from kind of falling down that hole, and making sure that these issues don't ever come up in your career. So that's what we're here for today. So this is kind of education and training, right? In your real world life, there will be strict testings, drug testing, zero tolerance policies, all of that. But right now, today, we're kind of in the red zone. We're just here for some education and training. So we are talking about kind of two major areas of drugs, essentially, for myself. So stimulants and depressants, okay? So stimulants essentially speed the body's systems up. They are, you can go ahead to the next one. They are lots of different types of stimulants. Prescription drugs, we have over-the-counter stimulants, so something as simple as nicotine is a stimulant. Caffeine, even chocolate is stimulation in some way. And then we have, obviously, illegal illicit substances. You'll see that, cannabis is on here, cocaine, methamphetamines, MDMA. They are all things that are going to speed your body systems up. And so what does that mean to your body then? What is going to happen? So you can become paranoid. You can have lots of anxiety. Your heart can, you can have chest pains, palpitations, irregular heartbeats. Prolonged wakefulness is typically what people take stimulants for in a prescription route for that effect. But for aviation, prolonged wakefulness is not a good thing, right? If you haven't slept, you're not at the top of your game, and you can have safety errors. Ooh, can we go back? Dizziness, tremors, headaches, loss of appetite, abdominal pain, vomiting, agitation, seizures, visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations. Those, again, go back to those physical requirements for your job. You need to be able to hear and see well to perform your job at its best, and stimulants can significantly impact that. Go ahead. So depressants are the other coin to this. So the most common depressant that you can think of is alcohol, and it's legal, obviously. Cannabis is again on here, and we'll kind of get back to that momentarily. But essentially, benzodiazepines, opioids, barbiturates. Some of these are prescription medications, but again, not prescription medications that you guys are able to take as aviation students or aviation professionals. So what do depressants do? They impair your mental functioning, they impair judgment, they can cause confusion, they reduce or you can have a loss of fine motor skills, slurred speech, reduced reaction time, blurred vision. Again, back to speech and vision. These are major call-outs on what kind of health concerns you cannot have to be part of this profession. Weakness, low blood pressure, nausea, vomiting, memory loss, dizziness, again, all of these things can significantly impact your ability to do your job. You need to be able to, again, have good coordination skills, fine motor skills, and your speech needs to be clear, because if I'm in an air tower and I'm calling something out and somebody can't understand what I'm saying, that could lead to a significant disaster, right? So it doesn't really matter if you're flying the plane or if you're somewhere else. All of these physical impairments are just as important. So specifically alcohol, because it's a legal substance, it's one of those things where it's readily available, and anybody can go buy alcohol as long as you're 21, and it's socially acceptable to use, right? So nobody's kind of thinking twice about going out, having a drink after work or something like that. And we all expect that you're probably gonna still drink alcohol at some points, right? It's just being very smart about your use of alcohol and knowing that there has to be a limit, and then you need to have some significant lead time before you're going to be working after alcohol. Alcohol in itself reduces inhibitions and makes you more likely to make bad decisions, right? So when we look at these charts, for example, if we look at, I'll look for myself. So I'm a female. Essentially, you're looking at how much you weigh and how many drinks you can have. And as a woman, no matter what your weight is, once you drink one drink, you are impaired, essentially. So that is something to kind of call out and think about, that it doesn't really take much in order for impairment to begin. And that's an important thing to note and be prepared for. Go ahead. So this is kind of a list of blood alcohol levels. So we all know 0.08 is where you're legally allowed to drive. But if you look at much lower levels, you have significant physical effects. And what we also don't think about when we're talking about alcohol is how much a standard drink is. Almost every drink that you can get out at a bar, restaurant, whatever it may be, is significantly more alcohol than you think it is. So for example, if I go out and I have a cocktail, it's really 2 to 3 standard drinks. In my head, I've had one drink, and so I think that I am safe to kind of drive or go to work the next day or whatever it may be, but it's really 2 to 3 drinks. And remember, I told you before, for a female, at one drink, I'm already impaired. So where I think I'm at, I'm really at 3 drinks because I've had this cocktail out, which has the equivalent to 2 to 3 standard drinks, right? So when we look at just 0.08, right? That's kind of the number that everybody knows and uses in terms of where you are, in terms of, can you drive or not? Can you operate a motor vehicle of any sort? Should you be doing anything? You have significant motor function decline, difficulty in hearing, seeing, speaking, and coordinating. We've already kind of established that those are key traits that are necessary in the aviation fields. Short-term memory loss. So if you are being told which path to take, which runway to go to, whatever it may be, and you can't even remember that because, again, short-term memory loss, that could significantly impact your safety and the safety of others. And that's one of the key kind of things to think about in this role is you are kind of a cog in a wheel where if one area fails, it really has a trickle effect and you're compromising the safety of so many other people beyond yourselves. And so one of the things that I kind of had highlighted was that cannabis is both a stimulant and a depressant. So Cannabis, again, is something that is legal here in the state of Illinois and readily available. It is easy to find and easy to consume if you want it, right? And so the thing is that there's lots of different forms of how you can take cannabis in, and there are lots of different kind of, we'll say, strains of it, and that kind of is what is dependent on what kind of feeling you get from the drug. So in terms of cannabis being a stimulant, it can elevate your mood, yes, but it can also elevate your heart rate, give you anxiety, give you paranoia. In terms of depressant, it will make you feel nice and relaxed and sleepy, which is typically what people take those kinds of strains for, but it physically relaxes you to the point where you have muscle relaxation. You can have lack of coordination, dizziness, again, short-term memory loss. And the other thing that we haven't really touched on too much, but cannabis can also be a hallucinogenic. So you can have detachment of self from reality and things of that nature, which again is very significant in terms of safety purposes, right? So yes, it has the increased heart rate that we already kind of discussed, that loss of control of your skills, but that altered sense of time and all of that can be significant, right? If you're using this and then you're losing track of time, and then do you have enough space between being safe to operate something? But we all know cannabis is a major no-no for aviation anyways, but doesn't mean that people aren't going to still try to experiment. So cannabis has THC in it, and the thing is that it affects your brain more than anything. So it attaches to those receptors in the brain, and our brain is what signals our body to do everything. So this kind of call out just says like how many different areas of the brain are actually affected by this drug, and kind of how significant that can be. It's everything from your emotions to your physical abilities, memory again. It's quite significant what THC does to the brain. Go ahead. So you have probably seen the do not issue medications list several times in your careers already. Because it is full of, regular everyday medications that we take. So it should be something that you are definitely aware of, how to get to, how to use, and how to navigate. So again, controlled substances are on here, including medical marijuana. Something to kind of call out on this as well is CBD. So CBD is various forms of it, but creams and things like that that are not considered to have THC in them, but they're not well regulated, okay? And that is the thing to really be aware of, that using CBD that's unregulated could have you test positive for THC, for cannabis, for marijuana, and you would be responsible for that test, right? So even though you're not using technical THC that you're aware of, you can significantly impact your ability to participate in aviation if you are using these products that are kind of unregulated. And there's lots of different unregulated versions of products out there that can also be dangerous. So key call out for psychiatric, psychotropic medications, because oftentimes many of them are considered stimulants. Again, seizure medications, those are oftentimes depressants, so benzodiazepines. And then keep in mind over-the-counter medications. So supplements like Kratom, Cat, things like that. These are, again, unregulated items. Yes, they are naturally occurring in the world, but they are definitely something that is unregulated and can give you the same effects that other drugs do. And something that I found very interesting when I was doing some research was that the medication that's found most often in pilot systems that have crashes is actually diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl, okay? So it's not always these scary things that you have to stay away from in terms of the cannabis in the world. It is everyday medications. So keep in mind your no fly wait times. You probably, again, have gone over this many times, but it is 5 times the half-life, which is 50% of elimination in your body, okay? We have a really quick activity. So if I could get 3 volunteers, we're gonna do, LUPD graciously allowed us to use their substance abuse goggles. And so we have a couple of things that I wanna show you how it physically does these things. Come on, 3 people. Perfect. All right, so I know. Oh, we've got too many. We've got too many. All right. So I've got 3 different sets of goggles. One of them is for substance abuse. One of them is, go ahead. One of them is that you are heavily intoxicated, so 0.15 to 0.25, and it's at nighttime.
No.
Nope, she's my assistant.
Yeah.
She's my lovely assistant today. Okay, and so go ahead and put your goggles on. We're gonna actually have everybody take a nice step off this platform just for safety purposes. Yes, just for safety purposes, just to be okay here. And then, so our blue set of goggles is our stimulants, okay? Or, excuse me, substances. And so you're each gonna do a little bit of a different task. So go ahead and put your goggles on. And then I'm gonna have Danny, if you wanna go stand over here, kind of by the screen here. And this is just a standard Snellen and eye chart. So I'm gonna have you take one step back. Oh, this way. You're gonna do the Snellen eye chart. And so I want you to just tell me what is the smallest line that you can read.
From here, I can see that maybe that's an E at the top.
Okay.
Is that an E?
So this is a 20-foot chart, okay? And he is not 20 feet away from this chart. So he should be able to see essentially down to like line 8 or 9. Go ahead, take your goggles off. Now tell me, what is the lowest line you can read?
9.
Go ahead, read it for me.
O-D-F-C-T.
All right, good. So
Line 9.
that's pretty significant difference in what he's able to read. All right, so we've got our next victim here. Come on over.
All right, which table do you want me to grab off of?
So what I want you to do is I have just a kid's puzzle here. I want you to find any word. So there's a whole list of airplane, pilot, airline, whatever it may be. So there's a pen on there, and I want you to just point out, can you find any word?
Well, I was just going to point it out. I wasn't going to say
I'm fine with you pointing it out.
All right. Airplane right here.
So now, mind you, I can see several just from here.
All right. How drunk am I with these goggles on?
You are intoxicated. You're .08 or above.
Well, I've never been this drunk.
All right, so now take the goggles off and tell me, can you find even one word here?
Okay, let's see. There's take.
Okay, he found something within seconds, okay? So that just goes to show us.
Oh, look, security.
All right. On to our next task here. So, next goggles, come on down. There is a set of cups here. I want you to just build a cup tower, but keep in mind, one of these cups has a hole in it. It should go on top, and then I want you to put a little flag on the top of your tower. Ready? Go. All right. We're slowly getting there. Oh, he's already missed the hole. All right. Okay, take your goggles off. Uh-oh. And now I want you to build the cup tower again. Show us how fast it can be done.
Not bad.
Well, we're already off to a better start. He found the one with the hole this time, so we're there. All right. So, significant difference in speed and coordination. And then I have one last task for you guys to do, and that's everybody put your goggles on quickly, because we're almost out of time here. And all I want you to do is just play a game of catch with one another. So maybe go down the aisle a little so you have some room. And I just want to see, this is a soft, easy ball. Can you catch the ball? Oh, all right. So I'm going to assume that you guys would be much more successful without these glasses on, but we've lost the ball. So, all right. So I just wanted to kind of do a demonstration as to how our senses are significantly impacted by these substances. All right, thank you.
We good? Okay. Yeah, it's all good. All right, thank you. All right, wanted to point out there's a couple QR codes in the room here too, so you can submit anonymous questions. Got a couple coming in now. We're also at the end of today going to have a panel up here too of our experts, so you can ask questions out loud, or you can scan them in. They're being forwarded to me and Mr. Menino, so we'll make sure those happen. The two that came in, let me get back in here, are department related. So one question is the department concerned that a negative alcohol/substance test will go on the student's permanent record, probably derail their FA career before they even leave college? Is college a place where students can learn and make mistakes as we turn into professionals? So that's a great question. And when we started to dig into the policies of the university and the policies of other aviation universities, the thing that was at the forefront of our minds was we have to make sure that this is fair and that there's a path back so nobody grenades their career at such a young age. Nobody wants that to happen, okay? So that said, we've taken that at the center of what we're trying to do, and we're working through that. But we have had a couple incidences arise already, and those individuals were given steps to take to prevent that from happening. And also, last year, we talked about the mental health aspects, and we had a mother of a son who took his own life in an airplane. And when you read about that, and that's happened a multitude of times over the course of the years, and in one of those instances, that student had made a mistake and felt that their career was over before it started, and that was their solution, regrettably. So I never used the term career ender. I used the term career complicator because there's almost always a path back, and I'm sure Dr. Novin can best speak to that today as well, which is a perfect segue into the next expert here. So real quick, Dr. Novin is a native of Chicago, attended the University of Illinois and Northwestern University Medical School. He's practiced internal medicine since 1987 and has been an aviation medical examiner since 2009. He works closely with multiple airlines, including United, Envoy, SkyWest, Sun Country, and Southwest. In addition to pilots, he has been certified as an examiner for air traffic controllers and applicants. He has been authorized to perform HIMSS evaluations and has developed a large base of individuals seeking medical certification with drug, alcohol, and mental health issues. His approach is to optimize an individual's chance to obtain certification and to guide them through the process. So, Dr. Novin. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Hello. So I'm not going to get into a theoretical discussion. I'm not going to get into a physiologic discussion. I think most of you want to know from me what the FAA does. And so that's going to be the discussion. In terms of, I just want to really quickly touch on mental health, which is probably a bigger issue for a lot of you than substance abuse. And hopefully it's not both, because there's a whole different set of rules for dual diagnosis. But the fact is the FAA is changing the rules very rapidly on mental health. And if you have questions, you should contact someone. You can contact me if you have a question, because the rules are becoming much less onerous for you if you've got a mental health history or if you're on medications. For simple things, I can get almost anybody through nowadays, unless there's certain disqualifiers. So we're going to talk about drug and alcohol. There's a couple things I always tell people. The first thing is you have to understand that when you sign your medical certificate, you are signing a contract. You are contracting with the FAA that you understand and will follow their protocols. In that sense, not knowing the requirements, not knowing is not a valid explanation. So if you try to tell them, well, marijuana is legal in Illinois, that doesn't cut it. You are held to things whether you know them or not. And we have so many people that come through and say, well, I just didn't know. It's like, doesn't matter. FAA, if you don't know this rule, then, or you break a rule that you know, one of the things the FAA is concerned about is how safe are you going to be following other rules. So this becomes the FAA's beginning process for evaluating your overall safety, not just related to this. The other thing is the FAA medical process is entirely risk-based. So this becomes a big issue with mental health as well. The FAA is not looking at you. They don't know you. They will never know you, hopefully. What they're looking at is, do you have the risk profile that makes them comfortable that you will be safe in aviation? So it doesn't matter how great of a person you are. It doesn't matter anything. It only matters what your data is showing them. So the thing I always advise people is don't take this personally, because it's really not. Realistically, I have an issue that if I were to get certified after 20 years of working with the FAA, I would still have to go through the same process as you guys. So it's really not personal. Failing to disclose information can lead to loss of medical certificate. It's considered criminal. It's omission, which is as bad as lying. If you think you're going to be able to permanently hide a past medical history of something, it probably won't work. One of the things I'm always trying to tell people is get this resolved at the beginning of the process. Otherwise, every time a document that goes to the FAA relates to medical on you, you're going to be wondering if that history is somewhere in that document. So for example, if you have a history of being treated for ADHD 15 years ago, if that's buried in any of the electronic medical records that go to the FAA for a headache, you're going to deal with it. So it's better to get these things out in the open and resolved before you get further along in the process. So I'm going to go through a couple cases. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on cases. These are real cases just to kind of introduce you to how the FAA looks at things. So the first guy is a 50-year-old who contacted me when he was vacationing in Vegas. He was a captain for one of the major airlines. He was in a casino. He fell and struck his head. They took him to the emergency room. He had a CT scan that indicated a small fracture at the skull base. He was alert, conscious in the emergency room, was admitted overnight for observation. He was discharged the next morning with a mild headache, lightheadedness, and light sensitivity. So what's the first question? That's the second question. What's the first question? How much did he have to drink? Switch slides. So the questions I ask, how did he fall? Was it witnessed? Because there's a whole medical process. Was this a seizure? Was this a stroke? Was it cardiac? So was it witnessed? Was there a neurological event? Was there a cardiac event? What are the FAA rules for someone who has a head injury with skull fracture? He was out for a full year because of the head injury. How soon can he return to flying? A year minimum. If he's out for a while, doesn't he have an adequate disability policy? This is a question people don't think about. But when you're out for an extended period of time, you have financial stresses. And many regional airlines, charter airlines, they do not have very good disability policies. So this becomes a huge issue in all of these cases. But the real question I asked him is, what was your alcohol level? And the answer is 0.24. So 3 times legal. So the FAA considers this to be indicative of alcohol tolerance. The FAA feels, rightly or wrongly, and I actually think it's right, but a lot of people don't. Usually the docs aren't the ones who think it's wrong. You guys do. But the FAA assumes that if you're walking around with a level of 0.24, 3 times legal, then you must be drinking a lot regularly. Because the average person who has this level probably isn't going to be walking around at a casino gambling, or they're going to be losing a lot of money. The general cutoff is 0.15. So if you have an incident with a level of 0.15 or below, including a DUI, sometimes the FAA, depending on the whole context, will let it go with a warning. But if you're above 0.15, particularly if you start getting up to 2.4, you're done. You're going to be in the FAA's crosshairs. Go back one more. Oh, yeah, stay on that slide. So the other question that you may ask is, well, this guy this event had nothing to do with aviation, right? He was on his own time. Doesn't matter. This report of his head injury has to go to the FAA for evaluation. They're going to see the alcohol level. They're going to have questions. So when I tell you you're signing a contract, you are signing a contract that takes over your life. So if you do something off duty, on duty, it doesn't matter. The FAA looks at it the same. So the fact that this happened when he was gambling in Vegas doesn't matter. I have another guy that came out of a bar in Chicago at 2 in the morning, got mugged, had to go to the emergency room. My first question, what was your alcohol level? His was 0.3. Again, the FAA sees it. They have questions. So whatever you do, whether it's on duty or off, you're going to be liable if the FAA has to question it. Next slide. Second case. A 35-year-old guy reported a DWI or OWI with DUI about a year ago. He was pulled over swerving and speeding. He failed this field sobriety test, refused a breath alcohol test. He spent the night in jail, was released the next day. When I talked to him, he told me that it turns out that he had a DUI 10 years ago that was pled down to reckless driving and was basically sealed. And so he never reported it to the FAA before then, or actually he's an applicant, so he wouldn't have reported it. But he didn't even think that that was something he needed to report. Next slide. So the thing you have to understand on the application, the FAA is not asking if you had a DUI. They're asking if you had an arrest, conviction, or administrative action. So if it was pled down to misdemeanor or reckless driving, if it was sealed, it's still reportable to the FAA. And the FAA goes into the driver's license database, and if they see something that you didn't report, you are now charged with omission. So the application, that when you fill it out, it asks, have you ever in your life, not 3 years, not 5 years, not 10 years, it's have you ever been in your life? So if this guy would have read that carefully, he would have said, have I ever had any arrest, conviction, or administrative action? He would have said yes. But again, I actually think he really did not understand the question. My point is, understand the question, because the FAA does not give you credit for not understanding the question. Next slide. So in this case, there were a couple issues. He refused to test. Lawyers will constantly tell you, do not let them test you. From the legal perspective, that makes sense. From the FAA's perspective, it's bad. The FAA assumes that if you refuse testing, you're hiding something. Again, it's a safety risk. This is not an assessment of anything else except, are you refusing to test because you're afraid of the result? And so if the FAA can't assess that, they will assume the worst. Very few people who fail to test are let off easily. Again, if you had a single event, you got tested, your level was 0.14, 0.09, oftentimes the FAA will give you you submit the documentation, the FAA will give you a warning. Don't do it again. But if you refuse to test, it's harder to get that warning. And if you have a second event, you've now defined by the FAA that you have an alcohol problem. It's not just two dumb things. It's implying that you have a problem. And we're going to get into how the FAA looks at this a little bit more. So the thing to understand is the FAA uses different definitions of dependence and abuse. So if you go to a standard psychiatrist nowadays who goes to DSM-5, which is the standard guidelines for diagnoses, they're going to have a different idea about what an alcohol problem is. But in the FAA definition, substance dependence means increased tolerance. Again, the levels. If you have a high level and you're walking around, the FAA is going to assume that's first criteria for tolerance. Do you withdraw? So we ask you, do you have hangovers? Do you have blackouts? Do you have shakes? Do you have seizures? Things like that when you don't drink. Drinking in the morning to get over a hangover is a bad sign, by the way. Impaired control of use. In other words, are you continuing to drink more and more and not really, you can't stop yourself? And this continued use despite damage to physical health or impairment of social, that's where the second one comes in. So if you did it once, even with a low level, the FAA may issue a warning. But if you've done it again, now it's continued use despite something happening before. So, well, actually, this is a little different. This is also if you have a medical problem associated with it. But it also implies, can you go to the next slide? Substance abuse is so if you use a substance in a way that was physically hazardous, which is driving, and you've done it before, now you are diagnosed by the FAA with substance abuse. You're mine. Let's just put it that way. You're not going to get out of dealing with a HIMSS AME. In the DOT world, a test above 0.04 or a refusal to test is considered substance abuse. We don't use that 0.04 so much in the non-DOT world, but we do use the refusal to test. If you can't do your duties, if we don't know if you're going to be able to do your duties, then that's considered substance abuse potentially, and those are where we get back into the risk analysis. Next slide. So what happens if you are diagnosed with substance dependence or substance abuse by the FAA? The FAA will have you go through a process. To get certified, you generally have to go through some type of program. If they diagnose you with a dependence or abuse, you're likely going to end up in the HIMSS program. And the HIMSS program is called the Human Interventional Motivation Study. Terrible name, but it started out as a study. When it became a formal program, they kept the name. It's actually more of a program that was designed by ALPA, the airlines, in coordination with the FAA. So the airlines have a strong stake in this. But to get certified in HIMSS, you have to start out with a neuropsychology evaluation. So let's say that you have a second DUI. Your course is going to look something like this. You're going to be inpatient for 30 days, treatment center. You're then going to be in IOP or aftercare. Then you're going to start doing 90 sessions of AA in 90 days. Then you're going to start aftercare. Then you're going to be doing random testing for 7 years, 8 years actually. So that will be the price of returning to work. Why do they do this? Is it a punishment? Some people think it is, and there's a whole organization that's fighting it. But the reality is the FAA is looking to assess whether you can be trusted to go back to fly. It comes down to risk reduction. They feel that if you have 2 events or you're diagnosed with dependence or abuse, not yet, you are likely going to be at risk for doing it again when you're flying. And so they are going to put you through this program so that they can assess your risk going forward with the standard protocols that they know and the road markers that they can evaluate. So this is just an example, and that's just to get in the program. Once you're in the program, the first year continues pretty much everything: psychiatry, aftercare, chief pilots testing. Then it starts stepping down, but it takes 8 years to get to the point that you don't have to deal with the testing anymore. And there's no way out. Once you're in it, you're in it. Now, why is the HIMSS program worthwhile? Because in the old days, before the HIMSS program, if you got caught with a DUI, you were out for a minimum of 2 years, and then you had to go through the FAA's process to come back. And for a lot of people, they still think that if I'm sober for 2 years, I'm good. But the FAA is not looking for sobriety. They are looking for sobriety, but that's not the only thing they're looking at. They're looking at recovery. What is your behavior change that's going to keep you sober? Not just, can you not drink for 2 years? And again, everything is about risk reduction. And you will, if you get caught with this or you're in the program, you will have lifetime special issuance, which means that every 6 months you have to go through a process to get recertified. I just had a kid he had 2 alcohol-related events, one in a car and one at his dorm. I guess he was 17, 18. 2 alcohol events, but both underage. And he was put into the HIMSS program at 18. But he's got his medical now. And I've asked the FAA a couple times, I said, how long are we going to keep this guy on a 6-month program? Because essentially, he doesn't need that till he's 40, really. So he's going to be at 26, he's going to be essentially released from the monitoring component of the program. But are we going to keep him on 6-month intervals from 26 to 40? And their answer is, we don't know. We've never had anybody this young. So the point is, if you can avoid it, avoid it. And I'm just telling you, once you're in the program, you're in it, and what perspective the FAA has that can get you in the program, and et cetera. We did talk about the cognitive changes that come with alcohol as well. And to get back, you also have to go through neurocognitive testing, which means you have to go to a neuropsychologist and get a full COG screen to evaluate that your cognitive, executive function, multitasking, everything's back to normal. And we see a lot of people who, within a couple months, they're not. So they have to wait and repeat it. The other thing you should know about the HIMSS program that should inhibit your willingness to get into it is the cost. The cost to get through the HIMSS program runs about $10,000. And that's year one. And that's assuming that you're not inpatient. If you're inpatient, the cost can go up to over $40,000. So, and the FAA, again, they don't care that you don't have the money. They don't care that you have the time. They care about whether they can assess your risk. That's it. With all that said, I want to talk about marijuana because I know that's a big issue nowadays. First thing to remember, the FAA does not allow the use of any marijuana at any time. Remember what I said. You've signed a contract. You understand the rules. They apply whether you're at work, whether you're at school or home. If you have a marijuana test that's positive, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter when, you are going to answer for it with the FAA if it gets to the level of the FAA. And for pilots, it always gets to the level of the FAA. I have several people that tell me I haven't flown for 2 weeks. So yeah, doesn't matter. You know the rules. A couple things I want to explain. So there's a ton of arguments about marijuana. You know, some people argue, well, I don't get cognitively impaired by it. Of course, they're the ones who are cognitively impaired. But the thing to remember about marijuana, and one of the reasons the FAA and safety-sensitive positions aren't going to allow it for a long time, is that we don't have a good way to calculate impairment and levels. And so if we can't say that your test correlates with impairment, they're going to assume that it did. So in other words, if you take a hit on something on a Monday, and you get tested on a Friday, and your test is positive, the FAA is going to, they're going to automatically default to, he's probably impaired. And so that's one of the reasons. There's a whole bunch of discussions about whether marijuana use causes long-term cognitive changes, but that's not, and that's another issue. But the primary reason is that we can't tell when you use it. And so knowing that, and knowing that the FAA doesn't allow it, there is no ever explanation for using it when you're on vacation. And that not just applies to marijuana, that's CBD. Now, why is CBD not allowed? People will tell you CBD does not have marijuana in it, doesn't have THC, and probably some of it doesn't, but some of it does. And you will never be able to explain to the FAA that your positive test was related to CBD. It's not possible. They'll never assess that because, again, what is the risk of making that assumption? They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. That goes with essentially kratom, delta 8, delta 9, bath salts, all of it. Now, not everybody go back. Not everybody tests for all those things yet, but those tests are coming. Federal rules always override state rules. Medical marijuana is not allowed. Medical marijuana is not allowed for a couple reasons. You still get the same impairment from it that you get from regular marijuana. Plus, the reason you got the marijuana card is often as big of a problem as the marijuana card itself. For example, I had a guy who came in who said, well, I have a marijuana card. And I said, well, you can't fly with a marijuana card. And he said, well, I got it for a condition a couple years ago, and I'm not using it anymore. Well, okay, well, maybe we can work with that. So I said, if I can test you hair and urine and prove that you're not using marijuana currently, then I might be able to get you through if we do a lot of work. I said, but why were you given the card? What was the diagnosis? He said, I don't know. I said, well, I have to see it. Because in the world of marijuana certification, there's a list of things that get certified. And the docs that certify just go down that list. And it may not correlate to anything, but it gets you the card. So when he brought his card in, he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. So he said, well, I never really had that. They just wrote that to get the card. And I said, so what are we going to tell the FAA? That you got a marijuana card for a condition you didn't have, or that you don't want to tell me about PTSD? I said, either way, you will have a serious problem with the FAA. So again, this is why having a medical marijuana card can be almost as much of a problem as actual marijuana itself. Passive exposure. People will tell me, well, I was in the room. I was somebody on the typical story, and probably the most common is I was on the L, and somebody was getting high on the L. Fact is, passive exposure is never accepted. Inadvertent exposure is never accepted. And part of the reason passive exposure is never accepted is because the cutoff levels for testing are higher than you get from passive exposure. It doesn't mean you can't have a microscopic level, but it's not at the level that we consider positive. Inadvertent exposure. I had one guy who's been a pilot for years, whose son came home from college, brought home some baked goods, and went to bed. Guy gets back from a flight at midnight, has a glass of milk, sees some brownies, boom. Next morning, he's positive for marijuana. So we actually did a lot of work on him, and he went back to work about 4 months later, but they tested him for 2 years, every month. I actually believe the guy, and I'm pretty skeptical, but in this case, I believed him. One thing is it's very hard to keep track of marijuana levels. One of the reasons we're seeing so many people get caught with marijuana lately is because it's very hard to gauge marijuana levels. You can't predict how quickly they're going to excrete from your system because we're looking at metabolites in the urine. And so that can be affected by fat and many other things. When we're really not sure, we can do hair and nail, which go back for 3 months. So if somebody comes in and they say, like, I had a medical marijuana card, I'll say, well, can I test you? Hair and urine goes back 3 months. Can we wait a couple weeks? And then I know the answer immediately. Or I've had people say, yeah, I can do the urine. Like, okay, you can't do the hair. No. And I won't even start the process with them until I know they're clean, because it's not worth it. I can't advocate for them. Again, we can't correlate levels and impairment. That's why marijuana is so problematic right now. And there's some evidence that long-term cognitive changes can be associated with marijuana. Remember I said that with alcohol, it takes about 3 months for us to be able to get a good cognitive screen. With marijuana, we are actually seeing people who do badly on the cognitive screen at 3 and 4 months who clear at about 5 and 6 months. So if that doesn't give you an indication that there are cognitive changes associated with marijuana, there's nothing else that I can tell you. I mean, we are clearly seeing people are not doing as well at 3 months that they're doing at 5 and 6, whereas with alcohol, we generally see clearing around 3 months. Next slide. So let's talk about some other things. Prescription medications. Opioids are the most common ones that are abused. If they're used for prescription use, they may or may not be allowed, but understand that they will all have no-fly times. And if you have to use them too frequently, you can't fly. So if you use them once a week for a neck injury, that's probably not a big deal. But be aware that they could show up on urine testing and you're going to have to explain it. But using it too much is where it becomes the problem. That's where it becomes pathological. When I get a prescription and I see you're going through 60 Norco a month, I have some concerns. If I see you get 30 every 6 months, I'm probably not going to be as concerned. But I do look. Unauthorized use. Using someone else's prescription is not considered legal use. So if you borrow someone's, well, the more common one outside the FA world is Adderall. People borrow each other's Adderall. If you test positive and you don't have a prescription in your name, it's considered a positive test. We see this a lot with husbands and wives, where a husband will borrow the wife's pain medicine and he tests positive. And in the world of DOT, that is considered a positive test. Methamphetamine. I've actually had a few people with methamphetamine. We're seeing it. Ecstasy, we're testing for it. Well, we're testing for all these. Cocaine, not as big of a problem currently as marijuana, but we are seeing it. Dextromethorphan. Dextromethorphan, the DM in all your cough medicines. Dextromethorphan is actually a mood-altering substance. The FAA does not allow you to fly for 60 hours after using anything that's got dextromethorphan in it. But people can use it. It's now, it's now being used in prescription for depression. So it has psychoactive substances. So I tell you this not because we're testing for it routinely. I'm telling you because be aware that this medicine has a no-fly time with the FAA. And then multiple substances. I've got people that have come in who have tested positive for 4 or 5 things. And yeah, they get in trouble. Not much else. You know, when we look at addiction, we're not only looking at what your substance is, but what your behavior is. So have you started, I mean, here's an example. I've got one guy who's a pilot who tested positive for marijuana. And it turns out that for 5 years, he'd been using marijuana every week. And I'm like, okay, I know the airlines aren't always testing randomly at regular intervals. I get that, but how the heck did you get away for 5 years? So what he told me was that he knows that they're going to test him when he comes back, particularly after a layover. So what he does is he brings a testing cup with him. And every morning before he returns, he tests. And if he tests positive, he calls in sick. If that's not addictive behavior, there's something, you're missing it. I have another guy with marijuana recently who I'm hoping I can get back, who he got caught with fake urine by customs, interestingly. And then he subsequently tested positive for marijuana. And his argument was, I started using marijuana, I started using CBD because my back hurt. And therefore, I don't have a marijuana problem, I have back pain. And this is a common question, is at what point does it cross? So as I told him, I said, look, I will grant you that maybe you started using CBD gummies for back pain. I said, but 2 months into it, you realized that some of them could have THC. And you know the FAA doesn't allow it, and you kept going. So you met one of the criteria for substance abuse. The second is you started carrying fake urine with you. I said, that's the other criteria, because you're now building your life around faking this drug test. I said, so yeah, you may have started it as back pain, but it clearly has turned into an addictive behavior, an abusive behavior. And that's where it crossed the line. So these are the things we look at because they're pretty typical in addictive behavior. In people who are addicted, who abuse drugs, we see these common behaviors. So, you know, if you see that your life is revolving around something like that, that's a good marker that you need help. If somebody tells you that you are beginning to revolve around a substance or a behavior, oftentimes they see it before you do because you are very good at not seeing it. That's it.
All right. Could you hand the doctor the microphone? We have a couple questions that came in here. I'm going to get them pulled up here. Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. So this question, when they say not to refuse a test, is that just for the breathalyzer, or does that include the field sobriety and blood tests?
So refusal is refusal. It doesn't matter what you're refusing. You're refusing a test to assess your status. So in the world of drug testing, urine testing, refusing is considered a positive test. And in the world of getting a DUI, it's hard to refuse a field sobriety test because you're sort of already falling over. In the observation by the arresting officer is probably going to indicate impaired behavior anyway, so refusing that is not as significant as refusing the actual breathalyzer. They're both significant, but the breathalyzer is the one that we really can't assess the risk.
In the state of Illinois, when you get your license, just like with the FAA licensing, you enter into a contract. When you get your Illinois driver's license, you are now under the, there's something called implied consent, that you understand if you get pulled over, that you will consent to whatever chemical testing that's asked of you. If you refuse, the penalty for a refusal on your license is twice as bad as if you were to blow over the limit. Not sure if you know that or not. So there is something called implied consent, which kind of dovetails a little bit what the doctor's explaining.
The other thing about that is I'll get people who refuse testing, and then they're tested later at the police station. And so they're like, well, my level's only 0.14. And I'm like, yeah, but that's 4 hours after you were pulled over. So if we extrapolate backward, you were probably at about 0.18, 0.19 at that point. So when I look at it, I'm always looking at, because that's part of some strategies. People strategize that. If I don't test here, but I test here, my level is going to be lower. But I always look at the timing, because that's going to tell me what the level was probably at the time of your event.
All right. This is a situational question. Individual 3 years ago was written a prescription for retinal migraines, changed diet, never touched the pills, but currently has an FA medical. I was wondering if that would show up on his record or her record.
So this whoever you are, don't, to say you had a history of migraines.
Yep.
You were prescribed something controlled?
It says, doctor wrote a prescription for retinal migraines alongside instructions to change my diet.
Did I hear retinal migraines? Mm-hmm. So if you've never reported them, there's a couple questions here. One is you've never reported the migraine, you should talk to your AME, because there's different types of migraines. Migraines that are just headaches can usually get through pretty quickly. If migraines begin to involve vision, you can still get certified, but there's a process to prove to the FAA that that's not going to be impairing you when you're flying. So that's the first thing. It shouldn't be a hard process, but you don't want the FAA to find out later that you didn't tell them about retinal migraines. The second question is the medication. I mean, if you're not taking it anymore, and it's been a couple of years, it shouldn't be a big issue with the whole migraine report.
Okay. And then this one is for some of our Lewis team. Just to keep this in mind, that's not necessarily a question, it's an ask of when you guys have your session after the break. We touched a lot on how to avoid drugs and alcohol for ourselves. What are some good tips for dealing with someone who may have an addiction to alcohol that is a close family member or friend? So just keep that, ready to go, and hopefully you can speak to that. That said, we are right on schedule. We're going to take a 10-minute break, come back here at 10:40, and we'll continue with our venue of experts. Thanks. Hey. Hey, how are you? Thanks for being here. Richard, it's always good to put a human being with the names I see on Blackboard. So, yeah. So, thanks for coming. Just shoot me an email. Signed in out there, probably. Then I can cross-check those. But I may not remember that. So just shoot me a message. Cross-check it.
daughter's up at Milwaukee School of Engineering, but a lot of her buddies are down in Illinois State. We're gonna go there this fall. I taught out in South Dakota, so South Dakota Jackrabbits are pretty nice. And I ISU, so we're gonna go down there in the fall for the games. Yeah, cool school though. So, well, cool. Well, thanks for coming. So, yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's good for everyone to hear this stuff. So. All right. Yeah, shoot me a message. All right. Yeah, we'll get you those points. Hey, Dan.
Am I on? All right, everyone, if you could start taking your seats again, please, that'd be great. All right, everyone, please take your seats. Keep things running on schedule here. Thank you. Mateo. All right, everybody. All right. I get everyone's attention. Thanks for coming back. It's awesome. You can tell the volume went up, so everyone must be back in the room. Wanted to address another question that rolled in here too. What is the Lewis University Aviation Department doing to prevent substance use and alcohol and promote alcohol awareness in our community? I think today's a big step in that regard, right? And that's what we're going to discuss that more. If you have ideas about that too, please share them. We've got our Lewis team here who's up next. They can speak more about that. Also, there's going to be a survey going out to you after today's event too of what your thoughts were on it, things that you liked, things that were maybe lacking, suggestions for next year. We took those suggestions from last year's mental health symposium, and that was a large catalyst for what we're doing here today. So please, if there's feedback that you have, don't be bashful about it. Please respond constructively to a survey that comes out. Okay, so just wanted to address that as well. I've already read the bios of Kayla DeCant and Ashley Eller. I'm going to invite them up now. for the next 25 minutes. They're going to talk about trends, statistics, services, and resources. If you submitted a question too and you're like, hey, he's not getting to mine, we're going to be doing a panel discussion at the end, and I'm saving those questions for that. So just stand by. We're going to try to get them all answered today. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Y'all can hear me in this one? Nice. Okay. Just as I said before, my name is Ashley. It's nice to get a reminder from the break. I'm here with Kayla. I am a counselor at the Student Wellness Center, and then I am also the ambassador for the SAMHSA Suicide Prevention and Education Grant that we have here on campus. I'll let Kayla reintroduce herself.
Kayla, I work in student life. My title is Project Director for Prevention and Outreach. I do a couple different things here and there: sexual assault, domestic dating violence, stalking, as well as alcohol and other substances on campus too.
Awesome. I know that at the beginning, Tony had a wonderful reaction as to how many individuals are in this room. I'd like to really underscore that point. Oftentimes, as a person who likes to speak and often does speak about the importance of mental health in the community, we don't often see this kind of turnout, especially within those departments that don't already have that buy-in for mental health. We love seeing the psychologies and the social work majors and everything in our nursing majors, but it's even more important to see majors like you guys here as well to have this conversation. It's really important. I wanted to take a second to thank you all for being here, regardless if it was your choice or if you were voluntold to be here by your professors. I appreciate your position in that seat regardless.
So there's a couple things that I know were mentioned earlier, talked about earlier, but I really do also want to take a second to kind of highlight that our position within student life, right, within the Dean of Students office at Lewis, is that we are here to support you inside and outside the classroom as your development during your time here at Lewis, right? And that includes all the things we're talking about today, both from a preventative measure, right, but also from like an intervention measure as well. And so having these conversations and talking about it, right, if you have concerns about your own use or your relationship to substances or someone else's, that's what we're here for, right, to have those conversations and also to think about what does your toolbox look like, right? What kind of skills and resources do you have to help you cope with the stress and the pressures of everyday life? And are there maybe skills that are missing there that we can fill in, right, with resources that we're going to talk about right now, off campus, on campus, and what are ways you can start building those now, right? That is also part of your journey as a student, is figuring that out and figuring out what tools work for you and maybe what tools don't, because that looks different for everyone as well. But I also know sometimes, right, folks turn to substances or use substances to try to solve a problem, and there are other ways we can solve that, right? So Jamie mentioned earlier using cannabis to help with sleep, right? Statistically, research shows actually does not help you with your sleep, right? But what are other ways if you're having difficulty sleeping or getting a good sleep schedule or having healthy sleep habits? What are ways we can support you with that and build those skills, right? So we can still reach those goals or those concerns you have just in different ways or different pathways.
Absolutely. And as we're going and talking about some of the resources that we have here today, I took special care to be sure that the resources that I was selecting for you guys all here are the ones that are appropriate for you. I actually want to prevent you from sitting in Dr. Novan's office to begin with. All of the resources that I have up here for you today are going to be what I would call a non-diagnostic resource. So essentially, this is a self-help resource, a resource in the community, a resource maybe even with a professional. And the whole point is that you are not receiving a diagnosis related to any of the behaviors or concerns that you are bringing to that individual, to that website, to that service, whatever it is that we're talking about. Because the most important part here is we're wanting to destigmatize a lot of what mental health conversations in the aviation professional space looks like. Already we've had some wonderful comments about last year's symposium and the importance of really putting forth mental health in the aviation space. And Dr. Novan already touched on the fact that there are medications, and so many of those FAA regulations are changing so quickly. So really the underscored point that we have here is please talk to someone. Whether that is someone here at campus, myself, Kayla, anyone at the Student Wellness Center, whether that is a friend, a family member, whoever it might be, whether that's any of these resources that I'm here to show you today, we encourage that community-based mindset of having a conversation. And before we get into those resources, I did want to give an opportunity to talk about something that we haven't yet talked about today when it comes to alcohol and other drug usage, which is this concept of informed consent. This is such an important concept when we talk about your ingestion of any alcohol or other drug, substance abuse, whatever it might be. Kayla actually has an amazing speech about this, so I'm going to let her go ahead and give that speech.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm all about informed consent in all areas of our lives. I want you to know what you're putting in your body, know what you're saying yes to, right? And actually knowing what that is. So when we talk about substances, people sometimes think about alcohol or cigarettes, like nicotine products, right? And think, okay, right, when I buy a bottle of wine, it tells me what alcohol percentage is in there. I know how much a standard drink is. I can measure that out, right? I know what I'm consuming. It's also been tested and it's regulated. That is not the case for most other substances, including, right, things like vapes and other e-cigarettes, right? Those things fall under this loophole that exists in this bill called the Farm Act, right, the Farm Bill, that maybe, hopefully, will be closed soon. But what that means is there are products that are in the stores, on the shelves, at your local drugstore, at your local gas station, right, that can say, I have 15% nicotine in me, right? I have 15% caffeine. I have this many milligrams of whatever it might be. No one is testing that. No one's regulating that. No one's checking to say that that's actually what's in it, right? And so really there could be anything in them. And also, there could be things in them that they're not putting on their label. So similarly, when they talked about, right, not knowing is not an excuse when it comes to the FAA. It's also, right, maybe just not best practice for us as humans to not know what we're putting in our bodies and knowing what we're ingesting. It also makes it really hard to know, right, how much am I consuming? So how much is too much? How can I be safe, right? How can I really know what's happening to my body or really make good choices if I'm not even really sure what this substance is in the first place, right? And so similarly, also for informed consent, I think it's important for you to know, right, what consent looks like when you seek out these resources as well. So Ashley already mentioned, right, that a lot of these are non-diagnostic, but we'll also talk a little bit about, right, what resources look like on campus and what confidentiality practices look like within the Wellness Center too, when we get there.
Amazing. We'll start out with some of our big resources here. These are our national resources. These are resources that are available to every individual. Anyone with an internet connection can go on and access these resources. So the first one that I wanted to talk here is a SAMHSA administration resource. So SAMHSA is the grant that I work for. It stands for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. Substance abuse are the first two letters there. So the one that I have up here for you is the program called Screen for Success. It's an app that you download on your phone, 100% free. I would highly suggest you look it up, not right now, please pay attention to what I'm saying, but afterwards. And it's a very simple, confidential, like I said, non-diagnostic questionnaire. And the thing about this questionnaire is it reviews all areas of well-being, not just substance use or dependence. Because as many other individuals have alluded to already, it rarely is a substance abuse problem on its own. There are usually other factors that are encountering that problem, or maybe other factors that are increasing that problem that we have to consider as well. So areas like your physical health. Oftentimes, Dr. Novan talked a lot today about increasing or using substances due to issues with physical health. That's also measured here. We have things like family. We understand that not only do your family create a culture of what is acceptable for you in your life, but we also understand that families are very stressful entities to be a part of. Even those families that are very tight-knit and loving, there's stress that exists in those families. And we want to be sure that if that stress is impacting you, you have ways of managing that stress other than substance abuse. In addition, it also provides some practical tips, and I love this phrase that they use. It's called protecting your health. The reason they use that phrase, protecting your health, is kind of the flip side, is what a lot of people were talking about today, in that you can't say, I didn't know. So you're taking an active stance to protect your health with things like this. And then they offer options for support as well, and that is local to you. So they have large resources, things that we think of, like AA, NA, things along those lines. But then they might also recommend local supports. If anyone's familiar with Trinity, they also have a living room, as many group services as well. So they might offer you a recommendation to the local Trinity services in Joliet to go to a men's group, or to go to a substance abuse group, or to go to a group intended for emerging young adults, whatever that might be. All of those are amazing resources that we have available here. And then all of the places that you can find all of these resources, I have written here at the bottom. I will be sure that Tony gets those so you all can have access to those resources as well. Our next one is also a SAMHSA resource. This one's actually a very interesting resource. It's an interactive resource on alcohol in the body. So this one is at collegedrinkingprevention.gov. That is a website that is owned by the National Health Administration. So here it goes through, you can select the various aspects of your internal organs, your body, and it will inform you as to the ways that alcohol is negatively impacting those areas of your body, oftentimes when we don't think about it. So the one that I have selected here is lungs. So acute intoxicating effects of alcohol and the non-committed risk of aspirations of secretions of foreign material, blah, 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 right? Essentially, that's letting you know that the way that alcohol is ingested in your body is impacting your lungs, the way you breathe, your bloodstream, things that, once again, like we have been saying, things that you can't just say, I didn't know. These are all opportunities for you to empower yourself with education so that when you are making whatever decisions you choose to make, you are doing so exactly as Kayla said, with informed consent. The final one here, or I shouldn't say the final one, I think I have another larger one here, but another one that I have here is Rethinking Drinking. So rethinkingdrinking.org is another NIH website. They also offer tips for cutting down, and notice that says cutting down, not elimination. A lot of the point of these websites is not to tell you that you need to stop drinking tomorrow and never drink ever again. The point is that you are not only informed about the substances that you're consuming, but you're also aware of the impacts that they're having on you, and if you want those impacts to happen. I can't speak for everyone in this room, but I know that I'm not out here looking to purposefully be depressed. But if I didn't know that alcohol had an impact that caused depression in me, I wouldn't know that. And I would want to change that because I'm not out here trying to feel any of the ways that it might be feeling if I didn't already know that those were impacts of my substance abuse, of my drinking, things along those lines. And then as I've mentioned before, sorry if we can go back. As I've mentioned before, we all know AA. There's also some other larger anonymous groups out there for you, things like LifeRing, Moderation Management, Smart Recovery. I also have Women for Sobriety in here. I appreciate all of the female pilots, mechanics, everyone that's in this room. I want to know that we're here for you guys as well. We have all of these groups that do fit who you guys are, and it makes sense. I know a lot of the times when we're thinking about AA meetings or NA meetings, it's a lot of, and I apologize to some people in the room, it's a lot of old men sitting around and talking about their lives, and that's not relevant to you guys. And I get that. I'm not here to tell you to go and sit in a room that's not going to help you, because your time is already such a precious resource. I want to be able to give you a resource that you're able to use that actually is reflective of you and the problems that you're going through. Now we can, thank you. The final national resource that I have is the NIAAA, 3 A's there, Alcohol Treatment Navigator. So the best thing about this treatment navigator, and I'm getting to one of the questions as well that someone asked about how to support other individuals, is this treatment navigator can not only help you to navigate your personal treatment, but it can also help you to navigate the treatment of an individual in your life. Whether it be a partner, like we've talked about, Dr. Novat mentioned, with husbands and wives taking each other's medications, whether it be a friend, whether it be someone in your program that you're concerned about, maybe it's someone on your mechanic team, anything along those lines. This is a free, non-diagnostic resource for you to be able to use. So if we scooch on over to the next slide, please. We have a section here that is just for family and friends, or individuals who are supporting someone who is currently struggling. Now, we have Al-Anon up there, as well as the next step. There's a crisis toolkit available on this website. So if you are someone who doesn't really know how to help the person that you want to help, you don't really know what the next step is, you are not someone like me who's received a lot of counseling training on how to appropriately ask and support and empathetically question individuals, that is an excellent toolkit to be able to sit down with someone, understand what it is, their problems that they're going through, and help them to achieve whatever next step they need to recover together. That's an important one. And then the other one, sorry, one more time, go back. And the other one I wanted to touch on is the e-health treatment tools. A lot of the e-health tools are non-diagnostic. They don't require you to see a clinician or to see any individual who's going to receive or give you a diagnosis. They're just online tools that allow you to access self-guided, usually web-based, and oftentimes they're involved with cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a kind of therapy that changes the way that your emotions, your behaviors, and your thoughts interact together. Because as we've said before, a lot of the times we're looking at behavior change in addition to the way that things are going here. As Dr. Novan said, the FAA doesn't care about you personally, we do. We want to be sure that you have the access to these resources so that when you are faced with issues from the FAA, that you are confident in being able to navigate them along with your HIM supporter. And then we also have some local resources here on campus. One of them that I'm sure you guys have heard of maybe 1,000 times, so I appreciate it 1,001 times listening to it, is Timely Care. That is a 100% free resource for all Lewis students. So you just go to timelycare.com, log in with your Lewis email. It has to be your Lewis email, otherwise there's no way to prove that you are a Lewis student. And everything that we have on there are journeys, which is their fancy phrase for their self-help guides and videos and supports. I have the one up here for substance-free living. They do have one that is specific to that. However, they have maybe, I think the last time I checked, there was like 30-ish self-care journeys up there, and one of the things that I want to highlight on there is a lot of the resources that we're putting your way is to deal directly with substance abuse. I also want to acknowledge that oftentimes if you are choosing to reduce the amount that you're intaking, you are choosing to go cold turkey, quote unquote, you are choosing to manage your own input, you are having experiences like anxiety, depression, stress, difficulty sleeping. All of those things can be supported here as well. So it doesn't just have to be, how do I live a substance-free life? It can be, I'm trying to reduce the amount that I'm taking, and my anxiety is out of the roof. I don't know how to manage it. Go here. Go to the anxiety self-care section. Learn some tips. See if that's able to help you move through whatever recovery journey that it is that you're moving through in order to feel like you are able to have success at the end of it.
And then within our wellness center, right, we have eCheckup to Go, which is an online platform that can help you really think about, like, right, do you want to explore your relationship with certain substances? So again, it's not a diagnostic tool. It is not giving you specific information about, right, any sort of specific code or diagnosis. It's just saying, like, let's have a conversation about what is your relationship with alcohol? How often are you using it? What are your goals in life, right? Is your relationship with alcohol or other substances inhibiting you from reaching those goals, right? Or is it becoming an active barrier for you? Are there ways that maybe you do want to change your relationship with alcohol, right? Or maybe you have negative side effects or outcomes from your use that you do want to, right, reduce or stop experiencing. So this is a great other resource to have as well. And then, of course, we have our wellness center. And I think it's really important to note that our wellness center might operate a little bit differently than even off-campus providers. So, Ashley, does our wellness center diagnose?
No.
Does our wellness center tell faculty and staff when students come to visit?
No, unless you want us to, and that will always come with written consent ahead of time.
Can I, as a staff member, access a student's documents from the Wellness Center?
No.
Why not?
Because that is protected health data. So here at the Student Wellness Center, we actually have the advantage of being protected under 2 different federal clauses. So we're protected under FERPA, which is what all universities have as their protection insurance to be sure that your private information is not getting released. And then we are also covered under HIPAA as well. And HIPAA, if you've ever gone to a doctor and you've signed a really long consent form, it's usually a HIPAA consent form. And what it means is that you are not able, you being me, the clinician, are not able to speak with literally anyone about the conversation that that person had with you in that office. Not even to confirm that you know who the person is. I could have seen a client for 5 years and a stranger could come up to the street and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? No. No. Because the whole point is we want to be able to allow you guys to have these access to these resources, to have the non-judgmental conversations with a professional without it impacting the rest of your career, like we've been talking about today. We want to be sure that you are able to ask questions, to receive resources, and to be able to access help without even the fear of, oh, my flight instructor is going to know. Tony is going to know that I came. No. No one is going to know when you came. In fact, when you graduate, all of our records kind of just disappear. They're kept separate from your academic records. When you get all of your transcripts, everything when you graduate, all of your certifications, nothing from us is on there. Nothing. And we really do that to be sure that you guys feel as comfortable as possible coming to talk to us. We want to be able to provide a licensed clinical service without any barriers.
So that's all to say, right? There's lots of options, and I'm sure we've even missed lots of and many other resources that are out there, and know that you just don't have to have these conversations on your own or think about this by yourself. We're here to have these open and honest discussions, to answer any other questions that you might have that come up, and to really help you, right, explore and navigate this relationship, whatever that looks like for you with substances, and ways to really ensure your success and your continued success while you're here at campus, but also once you leave, right, and you enter the quote-unquote real world, right, and that you feel like you're equipped and prepared for that in all of the ways. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. Is this one or doesn't it matter? Are we good? Okay. A lot of good questions. A lot coming in for the maintenance technicians in the room too. Like, you know, we've been talking a lot about time to fly and that. So, Doctor, we'll get to those during the panel if that's cool. You're good for now. We're gonna invite our last speaker up, and appreciate you guys. Yeah. So that said, let me pull up Mr. Gore's bio here. Nick Gore is a national speaker, advocate, healthcare leader, whose work is deeply rooted in lived experience. Sober since October 30th of 2016, Nick brings an authentic and hopeful voice to conversations around substance use, disorder, recovery, and leadership. His journey, marked by resilience, accountability, and transformation, shapes both how he speaks and how he leads. Nick has spoken nationally on substance use disorder and recovery, working with large-scale employers, including airlines, steel manufacturers, police departments, to address stigma, workplace culture, and sustainable recovery support. His perspective bridges the gap between personal experience and organizational impact, helping leaders understand how recovery-informed approaches strengthen both people and performance. His story and advocacy have been featured in national documentaries and on the Oprah Winfrey Show, amplifying his message that recovery is not only possible, but powerful. Nick and his wife, Courtney, are both in long-term recovery and are raising 2 children together. At his core, Nick is a husband, father, and grateful person in recovery who believes that honesty, connection, and clear purpose can change lives one conversation at a time. That said, please welcome Nick Gore.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. That intro makes me sound really fascinating. I promise you I'm not that fascinating. I also tried to get as cheesy as I possibly could with the title of this. How'd I do? Nailed it, right? Perfect. All right, so my name is Nick Gore. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am, and then I'll divulge what I am, because I think it's important you know who I am before you know what I am. So if we can go to the... So my sobriety date, my most current sobriety date, it's not the only one I've ever had, is October 30th of 2016. I don't think there was anything really special about that day other than I was just done. I was done getting high. I was done driving every piece of goodness in my life to the ground and making it just absolutely miserable. So I am Nick Gore. I'm a heroin addict. I'm an alcoholic. I love benzos. I love smoking weed. My favorite kind of weed is cocaine. So there's anything that makes me not feel like myself is what I like. But you don't just wake up one day and be like, hey, I want to be a heroin addict. I wasn't raised that way. So I want to tell you a little bit about my childhood to understand who I am, again, before what I am. My parents, hardworking parents, loving parents. I have a younger brother who is 4 years younger than me. My brother went on to be a highly decorated United States Marine. He was a force recon sniper. And I went on to be a heroin addict. So I don't think it was because we had bad parenting in our house. I don't think it was because we lived by different rules. I'm just a little bit different. Unique, as I like to say. I think that if you talk to anybody who has had any sort of substance use disorder, there's really a lot of similarities. There's not so much uniqueness. There's key moments in life that will kind of dictate which way your route's going to go. But I'm not that unique. I guess the only thing that makes me unique right now is that I haven't gotten high in almost 10 years. I haven't had a drink in almost 10 years. Because at my core, that's what I do. That's who I am. That's also what I am. So growing up, we had the best childhood. My parents worked hard, we played hockey, and I started playing hockey at 5 years old. And that's where my identity was until the day that I stopped playing hockey. Nothing major traumatic happened in my childhood, with the exception of a few things. Around age 11, 10, 11, I was sexually assaulted or sexually molested by a female babysitter. So looking back, and it took years to unearth that, that's traumatic incident number one in my life, right? That's kind of what was suppressed and buried for as long as I could remember. Around the age of 15, 16 years old was the first time that I ever smoked weed. And I probably should have known right then and there that smoking weed and drugs probably wasn't going to be for me, because I got high with my buddy Jimmy Clark, who sadly passed away from an overdose. And we smoked a bowl by the lake, and I got on my bike. And mind you, I was a kid who, like, the street lights, my mom was screaming for me to come home. Like, we stayed out all day, every day. And about 6:30, I would say, the sun's still up. I come home because after we smoked the bowl, I rode my bike right into the lake, covered in pond water and scum, and my mom was wondering what had happened to you. So right then and there, like looking back, hindsight's 20/20, I probably shouldn't have traveled the path any further. So fast forward a few years, playing hockey, you get bumps, you get bruises. So I ended up breaking my collarbone, and that was the first time I was introduced to any sort of pain, opiate painkiller. Now, going back in time, we didn't have the research and the data that we do today on giving a 16 or 17-year-old kid who was healthy other than a broken collarbone heavy narcotics. But that's what they did. And I knew real quick, let me back up also. Growing up, I mean, how many of you in this room felt like your skin was a little too tight at times, a little uncomfortable, right? Like you're just a kid, you're growing up, every kid goes through that. But I'll never forget that first time I took that opiate, my skin finally felt like it fit. By the grace of God, my addiction didn't kick off from there. But that was my first taste of opiates. That was my first taste of my skin feeling appropriate. Around the age of 18 years old, I was on the fast track to go play hockey for free, at least in college, maybe potentially get paid for it one day. And I joined the showcase team, and my dad ended up having a wild affair with a woman. And to the point that he left our family and abandoned my brother, myself, and my mom. So there's trauma point number 2. I feel abandoned. I feel like I'm not worth it. I feel like my dad is going to raise this woman's children, and we're not good enough for him, right? So how do you think that makes you feel, right? 18, 19 years old, your dad just walks out. And that was during my last year of showcase year for hockey. I ended up getting drafted to go play junior A hockey in Cleveland. My parents had divorced, and life was just moving on. It was just way different at this point. And I had the privilege of living with my best friend growing up out there because his dad got relocated from Best Buy, back when Best Buy was still a thing. So I got to live with my best friend. It was the greatest experience ever. Until one day I woke up, and I was sicker than I've ever been in my entire life. The most pain I've ever had in my entire life. It felt like somebody was stabbing me in my back, and I'm throwing up everywhere. So I get rushed to the hospital, and it turns out that I had a 19-millimeter kidney stone. Now, for the health professionals in here, you can see it from space, is how I feel. It was big. So I went on for an entire year of treatments for my kidney stone. But I'll never forget, when I was about to get discharged from the hospital, I'm playing hockey at a high level, and I'm trying to go to school for free because my home life's a mess. My parents don't have any money. Like, we grew up, with cheese sandwiches and the end of a Lay's bag, like, crumbs in the side of a Ziploc baggie for lunch. That's how we grew up. So I had to make my way. And I'll never forget, the doctor, as I'm getting discharged, I said, "Can I still play hockey?" And he looks at me, he goes, "Yeah, but you're going to be in a lot of pain." I said, "That's not what I asked." I said, "Can I still play hockey?" And he opened up my discharge folder, pulled out what I would assume would be a generic Vicodin script, and he wrote me a script for Percocet 30s. And it was off. Game, set, match. So for that entire year, I'm doing lithotripsy, I have a stent in, I'm seeing doctor after doctor after doctor, pain script after pain script, and eventually hockey had run its course and it was done. Guess what also left that day? My entire identity. Trauma point number 3. Everything I knew who I was wrapped up in hockey. Live, sleep, eat, breathe, you name it, it was hockey. And I was told that I no longer have a spot, and I'm stuck. I'm 21 years old, living on my mom's couch. I was dating a girl who had cystic fibrosis who went through a double lung transplant. So I have all of these things like mounting up, and guess what? When I took those pills, nothing could stand in my way. Absolutely nothing. It was manageable for a couple years, like most stories start out. It was manageable. It was all right until it wasn't. And I don't know when I crossed that line of being a drug user and being a drug addict. But does anyone know how a pickle becomes a pickle? Shout it out if you do. Vinegar, right? And then it does whatever it does in there, and then can that pickle ever become a cucumber again? And that's me. I'm pickled. I'm stuck. I'm a drug addict. And you could do one of a couple things. You could continue on your merry way, you could seek some sort of recovery services, or die a really slow, painful death. And I chose to continue on. I ruined every relationship I had. The girl, my high school sweetheart, left me, who, by the grace of God, has had 3 double lung transplants at this point in life, and she's still alive and well. But everything started in my life disappearing, slowly but surely. It wasn't one foul swoop overnight. It was slowly but surely. So back in 2011, now I'm the old guy, right, in the recovery, like you were talking about, telling my story. I see that. In 2011, my grandma lives in western Wisconsin, and I thought it'd be a good idea for me to take a geographical change of scenery, right? Well, it turns out wherever I go, I bring myself. And I ended up in western Wisconsin. I had no more drugs with me, but my grandma's friend I knew had a liver transplant. We bonded over my girlfriend / fiance, whatever she was at the time, her transplant and this lady's transplant, and I knew she had a ton of painkillers. So I went over and borrowed a DVD from her, and 2 days later, a day before I was supposed to head back home from my hiatus, now the cops called it a home invasion. I don't necessarily know if it was a home invasion, all right? But apparently when you go and drop off this DVD unannounced, you go through 2 doors and you steal handfuls of pills. She didn't really hand them to me. It's called home invasion. Now, I had an underage drinking ticket when I was a kid. That was like the extent of the trouble I was in. And I get arrested, I get brought to the police department, and my first thought was, I'm just gonna own it. Like, tell them I'm sorry, tell this lady I'm sorry, and they're gonna let me go home. Like, the worst criminal in history. I'm like, the tough guy. I'm not gonna, narc at myself. Within 2 minutes, I'm singing to these people of what I did. So they didn't let me go home, and I got charged with 2 counts of felony home invasion, and my first plea deal was for 7 years. Now, that's not the kid who grew up with loving parents, in a good home, a stable home. I was on honor roll. I was supposed to go play hockey, and now I'm sitting in a jail cell looking at what the next 7 years of my life are gonna look like. So I don't know how it happened, why it happened, but God had a bigger plan, and I was offered 2 years of probation and go to rehab. Of course I'm gonna take that, right? Like, what idiot wouldn't take that? So I go to treatment. I get into recovery, as they say, and I met a girl in rehab. And by the way, that's probably like the worst place you should ever meet a girl, because two broken pieces don't make a whole piece. And shortly after that, I won from Kiss FM the grand prize. I won like a Paramore, I don't know, meet and greet and some signed guitar, and we drove downtown to right in the loop to pick it up. And on the way back, she's like, hey, this is where I used to buy heroin. And my car just went, rrr. And next thing you know, we're on the west side of Chicago, and I was doing my first line of heroin. It was a beautiful summer day. I had a little bit of sobriety. I was doing kind of the right things. I was putting in as fake of work as I could to appease the courts and my family and keep as good of things in my life as I could. And for the next year, it was off to the races. So I grew up in Bartlett, if anyone knows where that is. And I grew up in Bartlett, and it was 27 miles one way. I would get off at the Cicero exit, I would hit the second block, I would turn right, and my guy would be standing there, and I would make that trip 2, 3, 4 times a day, every day. Now, I never shot heroin, not because I'm better or because I'm, a classier drug addict. I saw my friends shooting heroin, and they were more addicted to the needle than they were the drug. So I never shot heroin. There was a time that I had hit the street, and I always kept $60 in my visor. I think this is important to share because this is, again, not where I saw life taking me. I would keep $60 in my visor in case I got pulled over, because on the west side of Chicago, I kind of stick out like a sore thumb. Call a spade, right? They know what I'm there for. And if I got pulled over, I would say, listen, I still have my money, I didn't cop yet. I'm just gonna head home. Sorry, sorry it happened. I ended up getting arrested and sent to 26 in California as a strung-out drug addict at 115 pounds, in there with guys that I couldn't even imagine existed. And that wasn't enough of a bottom for me. That got me sober for a little bit. My dad at that point told me he's never gonna pick me up. I started talking to my dad again. He's never gonna bail me out. And then that phone call came from 26 in California. My dad was there the first thing in the morning, so I guess I beat him on that one. But all these things keep mounting up. I was working for a company, I was committing credit card fraud. I had gotten robbed on the west side of Chicago, so I stole my cousin's gun, who was an Evergreen Park police officer. I stole a gun from his house because you're not gonna take my $100 from me. Do you know how hard it is? I'm begging, I'm borrowing, I'm pawning, I'm stealing, I'm living a life that absolutely is complete opposite of who I am in my core. So I had a couple choices. I could continue on, or I could go dip back into rehab, because that's a safe place. Long before I could accept that I was a drug addict and alcoholic, I would admit that I was a drug addict or alcoholic because it was an excuse for my actions. Your purse is light. That's pawned. I'm not at a family event. You name it, that was my excuse, and it was beautiful. So I went to rehab again. I was in treatment for the second time within a year, a little over a year, in the same exact room, in the same exact treatment center as a full-blown heroin addict. Now something clicked there. I started to get, do the things that were asked of me that I didn't do before, that I didn't want to do before, because I was just a little tired. I was trying to keep the things in my life, not stay out of prison. I was trying to keep the things in my life that I thought mattered. So I started working in speaking. I started speaking with the Bartlett Police Department, doing heroin awareness stuff. I got brought on all these documentaries and Oprah, in which being on Oprah for being a heroin addict is like the least cool way you could ever go on Oprah Winfrey's show. I didn't get a car, right? So all these things, I started working with lobbyists and changing laws. So as a drug addict alcoholic, I suffer from 3 things. I suffer from a physical obsession, or a physical allergy, a mental obsession, and a spiritual malady. If I'm not doing if I'm not using, right, I don't have that physical allergy. If I'm doing enough things in my life, I'm not mentally obsessing about it. But the spiritual malady has always been the hardest part for me to capture and work through in my recovery. So I started going to church, right? I started doing these things, and I started feeling good. Well, then I started getting an ego, right? Because what heroin addict is on Oprah? What heroin addict is doing this? My parents weirdly somehow reconciled their ways, and they were talking, and when we found out that my dad had brain cancer. Now, I idolize my dad. Even all the crap that he did, I still love my dad. And it was that point, I don't want to say he was the reason, but it was that point that that familiar feeling of my skin feeling way too tight started to creep back in. Now, I didn't want to go back to heroin. I didn't want to go back to opiates, but I started drinking because I wanted my skin to feel good. And I was a full-blown alcoholic before I knew it. binge drinking, waking up with bottles, all the things that the old guys in the room would talk about that I would never become, I had become. 3+ years of sobriety, I'd started a nonprofit, started repairing the relationships that I ruined over the years, and I was off to the races. Now, I'll spare the details because we have more to get through, but it was 2.5 years of misery, right? And on October 30th of 2016, I was riding the train I was working at a restaurant downtown from Bartlett, and we were passing by O'Hare, and I'm not gonna give a God talk, so please just take this with a grain of salt. I remember praying to God, an honest prayer. And it was a cloudy day, and I said, God, if you want anything to do with me, if you want me to get sober, and I can have a better life, I'm paraphrasing, right? Give me a sign. We're cruising by O'Hare, and the clouds break, and there's a beam of sunlight, and it warmed me from head to toe. And my first thought was mother chucker, I still got $100 in my pocket and some pills. I didn't mean right now, right? Not right now, not today. So I got downtown, and I called our buddy Tim Ryan, and Tim got me into treatment. And this is the first time I ever went to treatment on my own accord. It wasn't because I was trying to keep things. It wasn't because I was trying to stay out of prison. I was just done. I was sick of living the way that I was living. And I did all the things, not some of the things, all the things that they told me to do. I went and lived in sober living. And people were getting high in there, but I was happy as a clam. I was free. It was the first time in my life I was actually free. Fast forward a little bit, my now wife, she's 14 years sober. I'll be 10, so we met in recovery, and I have a beautiful stepdaughter on paper. I'm her dad. And I started talking to her, and for the entire first year of my recovery, she allowed me to grow. And I'll share this because I'm super proud of it, and I think it's unique. But we didn't have any intimate relations prior to us getting married because I finally, for the first time in my life, found a healthy relationship that was built on emotional and friendship than it was anything physical. Because I always put the cart before the horse, right? I'm trying to chase everything else after that. So we got to grow, and I finally got to kiss her on my 1 year of sobriety, right? Now, I can tell you all the beautiful things that have happened in recovery, but there's a lot more crap that's happened in recovery. And I've been able to deal with it because I have a program of recovery. I have some God in my life. I have good accountability. I have responsibilities. My dad passed away. I was there to see him take his last breath. The relationships that I ruined along the way, you go through this 12 steps, and one of them is go back and make a direct amends wherever you can do so, except when to do so would hurt others. I can't even think of it. There's people I went back and made amends to. I thought it was going to be cake, and they told me, congrats on being sober, bud. I want nothing to do with you, and you got to swallow that pill. I had to go back and make financial amends. I had to clean up all the wreckage of my past, which sucks, so I could move forward. I married my wife. We made a honeymoon baby. Life today is absolutely incredible, but I can never forget what I am. I'm still, at the end of the day, a heroin addict alcoholic. As you can see, my arm's in a sling. I coach my kid's hockey team. I took a spill coaching his team. I fell and I tore my tricep. So I had surgery last Friday. You know what I lost during this process? The ability to get pain meds for when you're in a lot of pain. So sucking this thing up has been no fun. But I'm pickled. These are the things that I have to be willing to do. This is going to be temporary. I was talking with a good buddy yesterday. He said, your temporary pain is a lot better than your emotional pain that you're going to have way throughout the years if you decide to go back and use. And he was right. So a little bit of pain here is better than anything down the road. So I think these are I could name about 1,000 things, but what addiction really has taught me is that it's truly non-discriminatory. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, where you come from, how you're raised, whatever. Addiction will come as a thief in the night, and it will bury you alive. It's powerful. The silence increases risk, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. Stigma is a thing. Do you think I want to come up here and be like, yeah, I was molested by a female babysitter, I went to jail? No, I have to talk about this so that I recover out loud, as my buddy says, so others don't suffer in silence. And guess what? I also had mental health stuff going on too. Depression, anxiety. So it's rooted in trauma. It's progressive. It's a fatal disease. Recovery truly is messy at times. I don't do any of this perfect. I go back and make amends all the time. But you know what I have the ability to do? Have a clear mind and go back and make that amends when I wrong somebody. When I do something, we don't even cheat on our taxes. We're boring. We're super boring people. There's no cure. It's a spiritual journey. I think the biggest thing is that you're not alone, right? This is the people that I have done interventions on with spoken to that are in recovery would make your head spin. It's everywhere. How many of you in this room are touched by addiction? When we started doing this 12 years ago, there was like 1 or 2 hands, because A, nobody wanted to talk about it, and B, nobody wanted to be shamed for talking about it. But this is a real thing. It's growing. Admitting that you need help is truly a strength, not a weakness. Now, as a guy, I'm told not to cry. I'm told not to feel. I'm told not to get emotional. I watch a bad commercial on TV and I'm crying, and my son's like, Dad, what's wrong with you? Right? I've become soft over the years, which is whatever. But gratitude is vital. I'm grateful to be a drug addict. I'm grateful to be a recovering drug addict because I know what I'm up fighting against. Before, I didn't know what it was. I could admit that I was, but I could never accept it. And with that acceptance comes this overwhelming sense of gratitude that I have a chance at this and I can go on and live my life. Okay, so to talk a little bit about my professional path, because I do work with a lot of airlines, I work with a lot of unions. That's kind of where my niche is. My fancy title is Regional VP of Business Development, and again, my niche is working with large-scale employers. I work with, I don't know if I could say it, some of the big airlines, probably it's better to say it that way, with their ramp workers. Ramp workers love to drink. They love to have some fun, and they love to drive forklifts in the side of airplanes. Happens a lot. But if you really get to like scale it back and peel the layers of the onion, that ramp worker who drove into the side of an airplane is drinking because of some trauma that's rooted in them, right? Or they started taking pills because they hurt their knee. And guess what? Much like me, those people who hurt their knee, it takes away that emotional pain. That emotional scarring doesn't feel as bad in that. So working with the airlines has been, with the flight attendants, those are fun people to work with. I don't know if there's flight attendants in here, but that's a unique group to work with. But working with the airlines has been really eye-opening because it goes back to the previous slide, like it's non-discriminatory. You think these people who have pensions and who have families and all of this stuff to lose would be willing to put the drink down and not take the drug, but guess what? It's gonna win every time if it's untreated. It's gonna be untreated. So we kind of rolled out this thing called the Safe and Sober Workplace. So the challenge, obviously, is untreated substance use disorder and mental health. 1 in 5 adults experience some sort of health or mental health or substance use disorder. That's crazy. That's baffling to think about, right? Untreated, so some of the issues that you run into, now you're a ramp worker, you're working the tower, and now you're covering the shift, right? Because John hasn't showed up again. John's been absent. John has been told to go home because he smells like liquor. Reduce employee theft. Now you're like, okay, yeah, guess what? How many of those ramp workers have bags that go home with them that don't make it to the carousel, right? Carousel? So we see a lot of theft in that. It's a decrease in cost to employers. So it's important if you're going to be that employee, that you're being the most safe and sober that you can be at the workplace. So early intervention. So the question came up earlier is, how do you have this conversation with somebody? How do you talk to somebody when you think that they're struggling? I don't know if there's one cookie cutter answer for that, because every situation, as ununique as it is extremely unique in how that conversation will go. I've done probably 100 interventions, and it goes from screaming and yelling to coming alongside them and telling that you love them and you're not judging them, you're not mad at them, you just want to see them get better. So I don't know if there's a crystal clear like path on how you can go about speaking with somebody. But what I can say is that you showing up and you standing in front of them saying, hey, I see something's going on, you've been missing work, you have this, and that going on. What can I do to help you? And just being a friend. That's all you literally have to do is show up. And then from there, there's a bunch of safe faults that you can go. You'll go speak with your HR, with a union rep, with an EAP, with your business unit manager, your supervisor. There's a lot of different ways that you can go from there. But the thing that you can do as a family member or as a friend or coworker is just simply show up. It's the most important, vital thing that you can do. Nothing that you will say to them is going to make them get high or drunk. And honestly, probably something that you say to them isn't going to stop them from getting high or drunk. But what you will do is plant that seed. And you don't know when that seed's going to get watered and how it's going to progress and how it's going to beautifully bloom into something down the road that looks like recovery. Well, the next one. One more. I don't know who those people are. So who knows what substance use disorder is? I know you two do. So substance use disorder, I'm going to paraphrase it because I'm not going to pretend that I know the exact definition, but it's a chronic relapsing disease of the brain that is characterized by overuse of drugs and alcohol. However, it can be treatable, right? Going and seeing a psychiatrist, getting on the correct meds for your mental health. I can't tell you how many people that we see I work for a treatment center, in our treatment center that are self-medicating through drugs and alcohol when they have a simple depression disorder that can be easily addressed with Prozac or something along those lines. But they have gone the route of marijuana, drinking, drugging. And by the way, marijuana is wild. We have an adolescent program that we see and into adults. When I was growing up smoking weed, it was seeds and stems. And you tried to keep the seeds out of the bowl so you didn't pop the bowl and upset your friends, because that's how it was. It was Mexican ditchweed, as they called it, right? The THC that we have now is 94% THC, and it's causing psychosis that is inducing schizophrenia. So if you think that you're just smoking a little wax or eating a little gummy, we see people that are in full-blown psychosis that are in our high acuity mental health unit, a psych ward in our treatment center, because they were just smoking a little bit of weed, because they just ate a little bit of gummy, and it's induced something, and sometimes it doesn't come back. It doesn't come back. So identifying it, I think there's tells, right? Somebody's pupils are dilated, they smell like it, they're slurring, they're slouched over, they're napping, they're absent from work. Those are the easy physical signs, the unexplained behavior. But what do you do after that? Most of the people that you will go work for, if it's a major airline, have an already designed program for a drug awareness program. You go through an EAP, and the steps are that you meet with an EAP rep. You meet with their therapist, and from there they make a referral if you need to go into a higher level of care, meaning like a detox or residential program or a PHP or IOP type of program. So they all have a very specific program and a protocol on how to do it, and they're some of the best people that you will ever come across in your life. The most kind-hearted, servant-hearted people that are gonna come there and come alongside you and with that. But it's not just for, I think this is important too. It's not just for possibly you that's struggling, but what about your spouse or your kid that's struggling or a loved one? Let's stay in your immediate family. What do you do then? You're getting put on a performance improvement plan or suspended or whatever it may be because you have a spouse that is drinking too much and they can't be trusted to get the kids off the bus. That they can't be there at 2 o'clock and make sure they're in good enough shape so they can give their kids their afternoon snack. So all of these programs are not just for you as the airline employee, but it's also for your family members as well, because that's super important. This is a family disease. If I'm struggling, I saw my mom struggle, my brother, my dad, right? It takes so many people hostage that had no business trying to even be in this fight in the first place. Next one, please. So how to ask for help and when. We talked about the trusted peer, the EAP, HR. Nobody wants to walk into HR, right, and be like, hey, I've been snorting some lines of whatever. I've been drinking too much. I didn't want to do that. I don't expect anybody to do that. There's confidential ways to get help. You can call a treatment center. Like these ladies talked about how everything is confidential. HIPAA is a real thing. Now, I'm sorry, sir, you talked about how everything gets reported, so you probably should be honest from the start, but there are confidential ways that you can go into treatment. Listen, you're more than just an aircraft or a pilot or a ramp worker or whatever. You're a human being first. And I understand that this is what your careers are and this is what you choose to do, and it's extremely enviable. I think it's amazing. But you're a human first. You have to take care of yourself first. There are other jobs, right? And if it means that you have to lose your job to save your life, I'm not saying that you should do that, but I think you all are tracking with me that your life is way more important than your certificate that says you can turn a wrench on an aircraft. When to do it, near misses, change of behavior, you can only hide it for so long. It's going to infiltrate the work life. If you see somebody go in the bathroom constantly, they're rubbing their nose, right? That's a telltale. Treatment centers are across the country. Go to the EAP. Go to the person who you trust most within your chain of command that can help guide you into some sort of treatment. I mean, these are easy ones here. You're loved and you're not broken. You're not a broken toy, right? That's just going to be thrown away. People do recover, and they recover out loud, and they live beautiful lives. If you'd have told me that 10 years ago I'd have a wife, a couple kids, a great job, surgery without opiates, I tell you, you were nuts. Absolutely nuts. Asking for help is responsible. That is the thing that hinders so many people. And I can't tell you how many people we've buried. Facebook shows up on whose birthday it is. And it's got to be 2 or 3 a month that I'm like, holy cow, I forgot that they died. And you know how they died? An overdose. Now, not everybody who picks up an opiate is going to overdose and die. But I can tell you, every person who was overdosed and died has picked up that first opiate. And if you want to roll the dice with that, that's your prerogative. But heroin isn't what it used to be. Now, again, just because you took one Vicodin doesn't mean you're going to be doing heroin. It's straight fentanyl now. We have people that are literally dying at a rate that has never been seen before because it's not what it used to be. Put your hand up and ask for help. There's nothing more greater than you can do for yourself or your family than say, I have a problem and I'm ready to get help. Oh, I jumped ahead. You're more than your certificate. Again, help is confidential with you. Ladies did an amazing job of detailing, and recovery is possible. There's no clear path. When I first tried to do this 20 years ago, it was you were high and drunk, and then you were sober at the end, and it was linear. Now treatment looks like this. There's a million different programs that'll fit you, that'll suit you. There's individual therapists. You can do it telehealth now, which is not my preferred method because I think it should be done face-to-face, but you have every option to go and get well, and there's no reason that you need to suffer in silence, that you need to be held hostage, that you need to take others hostage by your addiction. And recovery is beautiful. It's a hard, messy process. I've had more issues in recovery than I have. Probably, well, I don't know about that, but I just thought it would be, rainbows and unicorns, but it gets messy, and you got to go back and clean up the things. So I encourage you, don't try that first one and dare, right? Just don't do it. How'd that work out, right? Here I am. I was a DARE graduate honor roll, and I stand before you as a drug addict and alcoholic. So I'm really thankful to be here today. I wish you all the best in your journey, and if there's any questions, I think there's a panel at the end. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I think I got it.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. What we're going to do now is invite our panel up. So if you wouldn't mind coming up, we're going to try to hit as many of these questions as possible today. What's that? Yeah.
If anybody wants to know, by the way, what the definition, what the FA is looking for in terms of recovery, that man is it. He's demonstrating exactly what we're looking for when people get into this recovery program. It's not about sobriety. It's about behavior change. It's humility. It's gratitude. It's service. It's spirituality. Everybody who successfully gets to this program, not everybody, but most people, will end up with a similar story. And I just want you to know that it's rare for us to be able to explain to someone what effective recovery is. He's sitting right there.
So somebody submitted this and took a lot of guts. It's one of you out there, so I'll do my best to get through this. My dad took his own life recently. He battled with alcoholism. I know we're all here to hear about the FAA and how not to jeopardize our future careers. I'd like to remind you that your loved ones, family, and friends matter more. If you know someone that battles with substance abuse, reach out and have that difficult conversation. Carry someone's tears instead of their casket. And if you're battling demons, reach out and talk about it. It's okay to say fuck it and work harder, but many people care. Ask the 100+ people that showed up to my dad's funeral. Don't be afraid to address issues with your friends and family. Don't be afraid to speak up because it could save someone's life and keep someone's dad around for their child. Forget about the FAA and the corny seminar jokes. Think about the kids that cry out for a parent that isn't coming home or a parent that will question where they went wrong. So I think that ties everything together really well. So that said, a lot of great questions coming in. The one I wanted to kick off with
We have a lot of folks in the audience here who are aviation maintenance majors, dispatch majors, roles in the industry that do require certificates but may not require a medical certificate. So a lot of questions around, like, what does that look like in industry? You know, am I going to be drug tested? Those sorts of things.
So the first thing is the FAA is not trying to ruin anybody's career. They're trying to save your life, and they're trying to save your passengers' lives. So the FAA's goal is not to stop you from flying, it's to get you flying safely. So there's a big misperception that the FAA is trying to hurt you. They're not. It feels that way. Kind of like he said, you know, it's a messy process. But if you come out the other side, the FAA's done its job and your life is better. The question on the maintenance. So I'm not as familiar. I know that maintenance people get DOT drug tested. I don't think they get random drug tested outside of the DOT process. A positive DOT can trigger the same penalties for pilots as it does for pilots, where you have to go through a program. I'm not as familiar with the mechanics and the ramp workers and everybody as I am for pilots and air traffic controllers. But it does trigger a process. It's not a mandated FAA process like HIMSS, but it is a process that will take you some time to come back from.
All right, thank you. This is one. I was recently diagnosed with anxiety and mild depression episodes. I started taking Prozac. How will this affect my career? Because I'm worried that it will affect my future. And this is a flight major.
Well, if you have anxiety and depression, I'd prefer you to be on Prozac if you're flying my plane. But the reality is that's not as big of an issue anymore as you think. Depending on the context, it's all about the history. But I easily get people through now with anxiety and depression on medication. The trick is the word on medication. So remember I said everything is risk reduction. The FAA is looking not only how you're doing right now, but what your future risk is to having an episode while you're flying. So being on medication gives the FAA a safety net. It makes them more comfortable certifying you because your risk of relapse will be reduced on medication. So in that case, it's easier. I tell some people all the time, stay on your medication or start medication, because now the FAA only requires you to be on the medication for 3 months instead of 6 before you're eligible for certification. And so if you go to the FAA and you say, yeah, I've had anxiety and depression twice, I've been off meds now for 6 months and I'm doing great, my first question is going to be, prove it. Because now there's no safety net for the FAA. So they're going to be more cautious in some situations about certifying you. So don't be, I mean, if you're on medication and it's controlling the symptoms, you've got a pretty good chance of getting through now, and fairly quickly. I'm getting people through now in 2 months.
All right. Thank you. And we'll open up the floor here for questions too. I just wanted to get through these anonymous questions first, if that's good with everybody. This one ties in with what Nick, Mr. Gore, was talking about in our team here at Lewis. Could you guys provide some additional context maybe, or tips on how to approach someone who needs help or how to ask for it themselves?
Sure. I mean, I can add some and then I'll pass along. I'm sure other folks, because I agree that there's no one right way. But sometimes it's nice to hear a couple options. I think that being able to share what you're seeing, right, whether that's the behavior changes or the differences you're seeing in their personality, right, their temperament, and just sharing your concern is really big, right? It's never coming from a place of like shame or a place of you're in trouble, but being able to say, like, I've noticed you are X, Y, and Z, and that just doesn't feel like you, right? Like, are you okay? I think that's can be really powerful, and making sure that that door stays open to continue to have those conversations with your friend or whoever that is. If they want to share in that moment, right? But also maybe they don't, and that's okay too. But recognizing and kind of showing that you see it and that you notice that they are, right? They are a different person than maybe they were before, and you're seeing that and you're just worried about them and you want to be there for them, can be really impactful. But I'm sure, oh yeah, go ahead.
I think that coming at them with facts instead of what you desire from them is the key to it. You can't come up with like, well, if you just do this, then, but I do think that if you're doing this and you're coming from there and you find the approach that's not screaming or yelling, there will be a time to scream and yell. There's an amends process and you can let it rip then. But in that moment is not the most ideal time because you're going to ultimately shut that person off. They know what they're going through, and now it's been confronted, and now you're feeling judged and shamed. So coming at them with facts, and then also with firm boundaries. When I work with families, it's finding who the weakest link is. It's usually a mom or a grandma, right? I'm not saying it to be funny, like that's, it's my little boy or my little girl. I'm not going to let them do that. So finding out who that person is with the weakest link, who's going to allow maybe possibly some more manipulation to happen, and having them find what that boundary is and sticking to that boundary throughout the process of trying to navigate them getting well. So facts and boundaries are the two biggest things.
I get this question a lot because I am someone who teaches people how to approach someone else and ask the question, are you suicidal? And that's not an easy question to ask anyone, including me as a clinician who asks it all the time as my job. So one of the things that I really like to encourage individuals when they're approaching situations like this is to not only present the facts, as has been already said, but also to the other half of your job is listening. You are providing a space for that individual who maybe for the first time ever in their life is saying, I'm not okay, I need some help. And by doing that listening, not only are you doing the first step of creating that non-judgmental space for that individual to then go on to say to other individuals, I need help, you are also providing the next step, which is, how can we do this together? How can you and I get help? How can I help you achieve X, Y, and Z? Use your listening skills based on what that individual just said for you. Oftentimes, we're really concerned about how do I do this the correct way, when really the only thing that we're looking for is how do I do this the empathetic way. If you're someone who the other person on the other side of that table, the chair, whoever, wherever you're sitting, if they trust you, it's not about what exact words that you put in a line to be sure that that person accepts your help. It's that you're listening and that you know that, that the other person is aware that you are not going to judge them for the answers that they're providing when you present those facts to them.
All right, thank you. A couple more, and then we'll open up the floor here for our last 10 minutes or so together. Do marijuana charges, this is for our doctor, do marijuana charges or mental health issues, and for our Lewis team as well, before 18 years of age have to be disclosed to the FAA and your aviation medical examiner?
So, yes. The questions that are on the application are ever questions. They're not adult questions. Those questions are ever. So if you were treated for ADHD at 5 years old, that's something you're supposed to report. There's a new fast track process to get through it without too much work, but you're still supposed to report it. So marijuana charges at any age have to be reported. Mental health, so I think the question was if there was a marijuana and mental health issue?
Or.
So if there was a marijuana issue, yes, it has to be reported. In some ways, and I don't want to make this sound crazy, but in some ways, it's easier to get through if you were using marijuana to treat a mental health issue, if the mental health issue is now under control appropriately. Because if your marijuana use was to treat depression or something that happened in your life, and you can prove that you're no longer using it, but you're now treating that issue, sometimes it's easier to get through on the marijuana.
All right. How long will a drug stay in your system even if you've been clean for testing?
Is there anybody that wants to ask why they're asking this question? So every drug has a different half-life. So most of the time what we're measuring in urine is metabolites. So there's a process by which things have to be metabolized in the body through the liver or the kidney and then excreted. That's why marijuana's time frame is so long, because it stores in the fat and then it's excreted from the fat over time. So marijuana is there much longer. You know, I think if you use it occasionally, it could probably be in there for a few weeks. If you use it regularly, I've seen it up to 3 months, although most people will say 6 to 8 weeks. I wouldn't take the chance. Which is why, now amphetamine's really quick. It's usually out of the system within a couple days. Alcohol, depending on the level you've done. But we have other ways to test. So if I'm looking for someone who tells me that they've, you know, potentially been using marijuana or amphetamines, I'm also going to do hair testing, because that goes back 3 months and it's cumulative. So that's why, you know, if I say I'm going to do hair and urine testing, they're like, well, I can do the urine today, but I need a few weeks on the hair. I know the answer. So it varies by the drug. The other thing is people think that they can use things to substitute the urine or to adulterate the urine. I guarantee you we test for those. I have one guy that he tested positive multiple times while he was in treatment, and his urines were incredibly dilute. I mean, like to the point that they were almost not compatible with human. And I mean, I think what he was doing is just drinking a ton of water to try to fake the test. He did a bad job because the tests all came back positive. But if the tests came back negative, we would probably have put a flag on them because of the dilution factor. So we test dilution, we test temperature, we test protein, we test creatinine. And if those aren't fitting what we have as normal standards, we don't accept it. So it's hard to fake a urine test. And it just doesn't work. I was in a bathroom in an office once, and some guy came up to me and he said, hey, can I get some urine from you? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I got to go take a drug test in a few minutes and I need a urine. And I said, well, I'm the guy that's testing you.
$50.
I said, so you've just basically failed.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any questions for Nick, Mr. Gore, or our Lewis team that people are comfortable asking? We'll run the mic around. I'm sure I told the doctor, we both ran into each other in the restroom, and I was not trying to buy urine off of him, believe it or not. No.
Nor did I offer one.
And I said, most of the questions, you're going to probably be getting hammered with questions up here. So
just a couple things.
Yeah.
My website, I'm constantly trying to update my website I have a blog that apparently isn't working very well lately, but anytime there's a change in the FA policy, I'm trying to throw it on there, like the CBD policy, the new change in the antidepressants, things like that. I also have a checklist on there for people who go to therapy. I encourage my pilots to go to therapy. If you think you need to go to therapy, go to therapy. Everybody's afraid to do that because they're afraid to have to report it to the FAA, and I understand that. But this checklist basically is just, this is what the therapy's about, not asking anything, it's just, there's an adjustment disorder or whatever, there's no medications, there's no suicidal ideation, blah, blah, blah. Person is functionally fine, and that's all that goes to me. I hang on to it unless the FAA wants it. But that way you're doing your due diligence, you're not hiding anything from me, and then I send it to the FAA if they ask for it. So it's there. If you go to therapy, use it. The other thing is, for anybody who sees Dr. Ostrom, he retired at the end of January.
Some fans in the audience, so that's good. All right, what questions do you guys have from the floor? Well, I can just raise your hand, I'll run out there. No, I got a couple more in here. You want me to keep going with these?
One thing real quickly, you threw out smart recovery. The FAA is not a big fan of smart recovery, partially because it doesn't have the same markers and accountability that AA has. And as I said, the FAA is not looking for sobriety. They're looking for the road signs that you're in good recovery. And smart recovery doesn't provide those to the same degree. And I've even talked to some of the smart therapy therapists, and when I tell them what I need, they're like, we don't offer that. So I've got a lot of people who have problems with AA, particularly the higher power question, but that's not really, but I've also seen just as many people who use that as an excuse to not go to AA. And so they use that as, I'm just never going to get there. So there's all kinds of concepts of the higher power, which I'm sure he could tell you about. For a lot of people that are agnostic, it's not about God. There's other things we can turn into your higher power, but there's got to be something that makes you want to be better. And it doesn't have to be God. But if you can't find that, you're going to have a problem. And smart recovery is a process by which you work with your own strength. Recovery in the AA world and in the FA world is about you realize that you can't do this yourself. You need something or some motivation to make you get to where you need to be.
Last question, and then we'll open it up for the panel to close things out here. A lot of questions about supplements, vitamins, magnesium, things like that aren't necessarily like on the short list today. Thoughts on that, Doctor, or any of our panel members?
The only thing I'll say about supplements is, it's particularly, I see this with testosterone supplements, we can't really regulate what's in them. So, I mean, the big thing we'll potentially find with some energy drinks or kombucha is that there's a bunch of alcohol in it. But in terms of supplements, I haven't seen it do too much. But if you're taking a supplement to boost your testosterone or something like that, then that's another issue completely. But it's always hard to say that if you test positive for something, it's related to a supplement. So I tell people to be very cautious about supplements because you're going to have a hard time trying to tell the FAA that that's the reason.
Yeah, I would just echo that and say, right, so supplements are in no way tested or approved by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. There are some third-party companies that test supplements to do some verification of what's in them, whether that's magnesium or, you're looking to take a pre-workout or anything like that. But there also always is that risk of we are just unsure and you are still liable for whatever you're consuming and ingesting, right? And so there's that balance to take. And also, regardless of supplements, I'm sure Jamie will back me up. I'm not your doctor, so please talk to your doctor or a medical provider about them in general. Because also, especially if you're taking other prescription medications, you're just never sure, never aware. So just always be in contact or in conversation with like your medical provider.
Yes, that was going to be my point. So for many supplements, if you take them and you don't need them, you can suffer consequences. So truly, you should be seeing a medical provider. They can do testing on you. And if you're deficient in something, then certainly they will want you to supplement. But it doesn't always need to be a pill form of supplementation, right? We can do dietary supplementation, things like that. So it is going to be something that I would say medical advice on taking those types of things, because if you have too much of something, you can also suffer health problems.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else any of you would like to close out with?
Everything I've said is not doom and gloom. The FAA is not trying to kill you. They're not trying to stop you. What they're trying to do is assess the risk. And everything they're doing is all about that. It's impersonal, it's frustrating, it's irritating, it's judgmental, it feels that way, but it's not. And if you look at it all from the perspective of risk reduction, why does this get reported to the FAA? Because it potentially impacts safety. And if somebody has a medical issue or a psychological issue, their life's probably not very good anyway. And that, as he said, that will eventually seep into the work. Oftentimes, work is the last place we see people's lives fall apart. And if you don't correct that, it's a potential risk to aviation safety. So when people go through this program, both recovery and psychiatry, it's unbelievable how much better their lives get on the other side if they can get through the process. And once you're through it, all of this stuff seems like it's still annoying and still frustrating and still irritating, but at least you understand it.
Someone posted this too. I think it carries a lot of weight. Do not let your worst moments measure your future. I think that's very well said. So thank you for submitting that as well. Last, thank you all for being here today. This is an amazing turnout. Thank you, faculty, for encouraging your classes to be here. Thank you, students, for coming to this as well. And thank you to our distinguished panel here. I think today was a resounding success. Appreciate all of you. Let's give them a round of applause. That said, feel free to come up here, ask the questions that you didn't want to ask in front of 300 other people maybe, all right? And enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming.